Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
Chapter 44, Rage, Anguish, and Regret. Anne, thank you for the Power Stones. Since we made it past our 600 PS goal, here is your bonus chapter. When Resnav awoke, he found himself trapped in a cold, unyielding steel chair that seemed designed to be uncomfortable. The surface of the steel chair felt like biting frost against his skin, sending jolts of discomfort surging through him as he tried to gain his bearings. Having navigated similar harrowing situations before, he wrestled with the encroaching sense of dread at the reality of his situation, forcing himself to take stock of his surroundings. Desperation flooded his thoughts as he examined the stark, featureless room where he was imprisoned, desperately seeking any hint of escape. To his horror, the space contained nothing but four menacing steel walls, a grim concrete floor, and a metal ceiling adorned with harsh, glaring lights that illuminated everything in relentless brightness. The only potential distractions from the chilling monotony were two small air vents, their grills cold and foreboding. But the most disturbing fact of the room were the utter lack of doors. "What is this?" Resnav rasped, each word laden with frustration as he struggled against the merciless grip of the chair. His heart raced, a frantic drum in his chest, as he glanced down to witness the chilling sight of the chair fuse to the floor beneath him, trapping him like a fly in a web. Panic surged within him, threatening to drown out the remnants of calm he clung to. In that silent, suffocating moment, a crimson light erupted over the center of the wall to his left. It flickered ominously before extinguishing, revealing a doorway. Paradoxically, instead of offering any glimmer of salvation, it only intensified the oppressive atmosphere, tightening the noose around his throat. With tense, unsettling stillness, Atomic entered the room. The moment he stepped through the threshold, the doorway vanished entirely, leaving only the cold, unforgiving steel wall behind. An icy dread settled in Resnav's stomach, like a stone dropped into the depths of a dark abyss, as he grasped the full extent of his entrapment. "It's you," Resnav hissed. Atomic said nothing as he approached the trapped Russian. Once in front of him, Atomic stomped his foot, and a plush, wooden chair rose from the ground behind him. Taking a seat, Atomic remained silent and stared down at Resnav, causing the hardened man to bristle. "What is this? Your attempt to intimidate me? I've seen and done far worse to several dozen men. This is nothing." Resnav barked, spitting at Atomic. However, before his spit could reach Atomic, it fizzled into nothing. Resnav composed himself, showing no outward signs that Atomic's presence affected him. Yet, deep inside, he was unsettled. Sitting across from him was a person who wielded an extraordinary power, capable of manifesting anything he desired with a mere gesture. This unique ability made Atomic an almost insurmountable force. There was little that any individual or entity could do to challenge or hinder him. With a simple wave of his hands, he could make weapons, armor, vehicles, and even illicit substances materialize or transform into something entirely different. The question loomed, how could any criminal organization possibly stand against such overwhelming might? It came as no surprise, then, that Atomic effortlessly dismantled colossal and formidable criminal enterprises, such as Maximilian Zhukov's extensive network involved in human trafficking and drug smuggling. In a matter of mere months, he eradicated operations that others could barely fathom disrupting. This accomplishment was not just a feat of power but one of unprecedented efficiency. Even elite law enforcement agencies like the FBI, CIA, and SHIELD, blessed with vast resources and expansive authority, would have needed years, if not decades, to achieve the same result. Consequently, any criminal wishing to extend their presence lived in constant fear of Atomic's mere existence. The mere whisper of his name struck terror into the hearts of those who operated in the shadows, sending them scurrying into hiding. Confronted with his capabilities, escape seemed a futile endeavor, capture was virtually assured, and evasion an even more unlikely outcome. In the eyes of the criminal underworld, Atomic emerged as a formidable force of nature, a harbinger of justice whose actions were swift and unyielding. The notion of him was synonymous with imminent danger and the dire need for concealment. Yet, amidst this pervasive fear, a singular fact brought a sliver of solace to those entrenched in illegal activities. Atomic did not kill. This strange moral code provided an odd sense of security, a twisted reassurance that while he would bring their operations crashing down and bring them before the police, there was a line he chose not to cross. "You expect me to believe that you're going to force me to tell you where Zhukov is? I would sooner die than expose my boss," Resnav said with a large smile and leaned back on his uncomfortable chair. "So you might as well take me to prison. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. Earlier this year, on April 21st, do you remember the name of the man you killed in cold blood?" Atomic said, his voice low and steady. Resnav blinked and, despite himself, thought back to that date. In the end, he couldn't remember. "I've killed many men. It's impossible to remember them all, he said with a cruel smirk. Why? Did I kill someone you knew? Were they family? Now I regret not remembering. Atomic watched Resnav laugh with his head thrown back. The simmering, cold, repressed rage he had locked away for several months was threatening to explode out of him. But he held strong. No matter how shaky that restraint was. His name was Luigi Lombardi. He was a good and kind man. A man who loved his daughter and his community. A man who brought so much light into the world. A man you murdered without a second thought after you beat him down like a dog in front of his daughter. Atomic said, his words slowly became lower, and his voice was shaky. That's who you killed. Resnav's eyes widened, and the memory of Luigi stepping up to his men to protect his daughter resurfaced. A gasp of realization escaped him. But it wasn't due to him suddenly feeling regretful over what he had done, no, he remembered now because of how hilarious the memory was. As such, Resnav began to laugh. A laugh so loud and out of control that one would think he just heard the most hilarious joke ever told by a master comedian. Atomic leaned back in his chair, his expression utterly confused as he listened to Resnav laugh. That's who you're so upset over. Some fat man who made pizzas. Oh man. I can't believe that's the reason you did all this for. Resnav's laugh began to ease into chuckles. I thought that I might have killed your father or something like that, but I couldn't have imagined it was that blubbering oaf. With a cruel grin, Resnav leaned forward. You know, you really should be thanking me, Atomic. One of my men, a real fucked up individual, I'll admit, wanted to fuck this Luigi guy's daughter right in front of him before we shot him. If it weren't for me, he would have done it. Go on, thank me dash. Instantly, all of Resnav's restraints and chair transmuted into oxygen. Standing to his feet, Atomic's own chair disappeared. In another flash, Atomic's armored gloves, cape, and helmet vanished to reveal Wyatt's enraged expression. Resnav looked up in shock at the sight of the 17-year-old Wyatt. Hey, child. Stand. Up, Wyatt hissed, his eyes burning with all the rage he's kept locked away for the last several years. Resnav's shock quickly disappeared, and he stood to his feet. He glared at the teenager in front of him and cracked his neck. What's this? What's your game here, boy? Wyatt glared at the man as his entire body shook with all his pent-up feelings. I thought I could do this the right way. The just way. But seeing you in front of me, listening to you talk, you're nothing but an animal who doesn't care about the lives he ruins. Resnav blinked at Wyatt before a small chuckle escaped his lips. You want to beat me down like a man? You could use your powers to destroy me in seconds. Why do this? There is no why. All I want to do right now is make you hurt. Right here, right now. There's nothing more than just me and you. No powers. No weapons. Just my fists, Wyatt said as he walked up to Resnav, the rest of his suit changing back into a pair of everyday clothes. Thinking this was his chance to turn the situation around, Resnav chuckled and ran at Wyatt with his fists raised. The boy may have godlike powers, but in a competition of skill and strength, Resnav's own body eclipsed Wyatt's own. Within a second, the two reached one another and sent out their fists. With a quick weave, Wyatt ducked under Resnav's punch and countered with a sharp hook into the older man's ribs. Resnav grunted and brought down a hammer fist into Wyatt's cheek. Ignoring the sharp sting of pain and the taste of blood, Wyatt moved in and slammed his right elbow into the same spot he had hit Resnav before. The man coughed as his ribs shifted from under the blow. Using fast and devastating combos, Wyatt unleashed a volley of violent punches, kicks, knees, and elbows at Resnav. Each new attack elicited a grunt of pain from the Russian. Once he finally caught his breath, Resnav grabbed both of Wyatt's wrists and crashed his forehead against Wyatt's nose, breaking it. Tears stung at the corners of his eyes, and Wyatt's body folded over as Resnav buried his fist into his stomach. Such an attack would have normally folded any other person, but Wyatt had been continuously beaten down by Logan during all of their training sessions. Greatly increases his tolerance to pain and strengthening his body's ability to absorb such attacks. In a snap, Wyatt grabbed Resnav's arm and tossed him over his shoulder. Resnav's eyes grew wide as he let out a scream, his back impacting the hard floor. With expert fluidity, Wyatt moved himself onto Resnav's side and held the man's arm in an arm bar. With a thrust of his hips, a loud snap echoed in the room. A piercing scream of pain bounced off the walls as Resnav rolled to his side to nurse his broken arm. But a firm grip on the front of his shirt pulled him up. Resnav looked up right on time to see a bloody fist slam into his face. He gasped as the fist pulled away, but only to immediately come crashing back down. Punch after punch rained down onto Resnav's bloodied and quickly bruising face as Wyatt unleashed all his pent-up rage and emotions onto the man. At some point, he had let go of the man's shirt and used both fists to strike down. Red, hot tears ran down his face as he pictured Luigi's body being rolled out of his pizzeria and the sight of Serena standing within a shipping container. This is for Luigi. This is for Serena. This is for every fucking life he ruined. Wyatt roared as waves of pain shot up his fists with every new punch he struck into Resnav's face. Wyatt's knuckles were torn and bruised as he continued his relentless assault. As his breathing grew out of control, Wyatt's stamina quickly burned out, leaving him to pant as he kneeled over Resnav's stomach. His hands and face were covered in blood as Resnav's disfigured face stared up at him. Teeth and blood lay scattered all around the man's head as he barely managed to draw breath. With a growl, Wyatt reached out to the man's neck and began to squeeze. As Resnav began to wheeze and choke, Wyatt screamed in frustration and tore his hands away. Reaching down, Wyatt pulled Resnav up to his face and let out a blood-curdling yell full of all his rage, anguish, and regret. "I want to kill you. Gods know I do. But if I do that, I'll be no better than you," Wyatt said, not to Resnav, but to himself. "You don't get to change who I am. Who I want to be. I won't let that happen." Rising to his feet, Wyatt looked down at Resnav with complete hatred and left the room. As he stepped outside, he created a high-security solid steel door that quickly closed behind him with a metallic clang. Wyatt stood in the brightly lit corridor of the prison, his gaze fixed on the plaque affixed to the wall beside the heavy steel door. The lone name engraved on it caused his injure to flare, Resnav. Beneath it, another title was etched starkly, Prisoner Number 1. "In half an hour, tend to his injuries and wake him up." "I'm not done with him yet," Wyatt commanded, his voice steady despite the heaviness in his chest. A sleek, red and black robot, polished to a mirror finish and standing tall amidst the bleak surroundings, acknowledged him with a curt nod. "Very well, sir," the robot replied, its voice smooth and emotionless, as it clutched a first aid kit with its metallic hands. Wyatt, still smeared with blood, strode through the cavernous hall. The atmosphere felt thick, oppressive, rows of empty, inescapable cells lined the walls, each one a grim promise of imprisonment for humanity's darkest souls. He had constructed this facility deep beneath the icy expanse of Antarctica, a fortress built from the blueprints of the MCU Nevada facility. It had been a colossal undertaking, one driven by a sense of urgency and a heavy burden of moral responsibility. This prison was his solution, a fortress for those he deemed too dangerous to be left to the whims of a faltering justice system. Over a dozen robotic sentinels like the one standing outside of Resnav's cell were programmed not just to guard, but to attend to its future inmates. This prison had become Wyatt's answer to a dilemma he grappled with, his refusal to take a human life, no matter how justified the act might seem. He was determined not to become a vigilante who resorted to lethal force, not wanting to commit the very act he sought to prevent. He rejected the philosophy of heroes like the Batman, who placed their faith in a broken system that repeatedly allowed the worst offenders to slip through its fingers, escaping punishment or regaining freedom through clever legal maneuvering. Wyatt understood the stakes, he was painfully aware of how easily these monsters could return to wreak havoc on innocent lives. Despite the moral or outside consequences of his decision, Wyatt was determined to do what was necessary. No matter the cost to his own ideals or conscience. For several painstaking weeks, he devoted himself to the monumental task of constructing a prison buried deep beneath the ice-covered landscape of Antarctica, several hundred kilometers below the surface. This formidable facility was built using an impressive combination of the toughest materials known to man, with adamantium as its primary component, renowned for its unparalleled strength and durability. Each section of the prison was meticulously designed, incorporating expertly coded programs and advanced equipment to ensure seamless operation, effectively eliminating the possibility of human error. Wyatt deployed dozens of his newly constructed Guardian robots throughout the facility as an added layer of security. These machines were programmed to handle unforeseen circumstances with the nuance and adaptability of a human caretaker. Additionally, he stationed a small army of his highly advanced Gundam mechs, ready to respond to any improbable scenario in which a prisoner might attempt to escape. Even in the most unlikely of circumstances a prisoner does escape their cell, true escape would be impossible. If the prisoners somehow managed to overcome the Gundam mechas, they would then have to face the several thick layers of solid steel and adamantium, along with hundreds of kilometers of densely packed ice standing between them and freedom. Inside the prison, each cell resembled a minimalist New York apartment, furnished only with the bare essentials necessary for human sustenance. Bland yet nutritious meals and fresh water were delivered through a state-of-the-art shuttle system, ensuring that inmates received what they needed without the risk of interaction. Each room contained an assortment of books, brain teasers, and a small television encased in reinforced glass to protect against potential vandalism or attempts to disable it. The television, however, offered little variety. It broadcast only 2 channels, one featuring an endless stream of Sesame Street reruns and the other dedicated to streaming classic Hallmark movies. The prison Wyatt had meticulously crafted, aptly named the Fortress of Solitude, stood as a testament to his vision, an unparalleled fortress of security, escape-proof and extraordinarily efficient. Reaching the central control room of the prison, Wyatt stared unblinkingly at the large monitor screen displaying a video of Resnav lying unconscious. After a moment, the harsh reality of the brutal state he had left the men in finally sank in. Wyatt fell to his knees and looked down at his bloodied and torn hands. Clenching them into fists, he collapsed forward, pressing his forehead against the cool iron floor. God damn it. Wyatt hissed as tears began to stream down his face. Chapter 45, it's over. Dressed in a thick black jacket that seemed to swallow him whole, Wyatt walked along the midst of Mount Hope Cemetery, watching as his breath escaped in delicate puffs of white mist, the chilly November air biting at his exposed skin. Each inhalation sent jolts of pain through his injured and bruised face as he trudged along the winding paths, surrounded by the solemn silhouettes of ancient tombstones. A few fellow visitors glanced his way, their eyes drawn to the stark white bandages and the angry bruises marring Wyatt's features, but they quickly returned to their own realms of sorrow, steeped in their grief and the weight of their memories. Finally arriving at his destination, he knelt before a pristine gravestone, its surface gleaming even in the muted light of the overcast sky. The name etched deeply into the stone, Luigi Lombardi. Reaching out with a trembling hand, Wyatt brushed away the non-existent dust that clung to the gravestone as if it could somehow erase the ache in his soul. He held onto the cool stone, his heart heavy, and let out a weary sigh, the sound echoing softly in the stillness of the cemetery. I got him, Luigi. I found the men who took you away from Serena. He won't hurt anyone ever again, Wyatt whispered. I lost control. The things he said. I couldn't stop myself, and I just beat him down. I almost killed him. Wyatt looked down at the bandages covering his injured knuckles. I just lost myself to all that rage that I thought I had under control. But it was too much. It broke free after the way he talked about Serena. I couldn't stop it. A burst of heat rose in his chest, but it quickly settled. Even now, remembering the words Resnav said about how his men almost assaulted Serena still caused his inner rage to burst forward. But after the grave assault he performed on Resnav, which ended with the man's face being permanently disfigured, any and all of the anger Wyatt kept locked away had been finally released. Only embers of its existence remained. I can guess what you would say, that what I did to that man wasn't wrong and that Resnav got what he deserved. Killing him would be easier than keeping him locked up for the rest of his life. I want to agree with that. I do. But I can't. I can't allow myself to sink to that level again. I refuse to become like them. I know it's naive. I understand that the world would be better off without people like him. But I don't want to be an executioner. I want to inspire people to be better. Wyatt took a seat and leaned on his knees. I know how that sounds. It's a childish dream, especially considering the world I'm living in. Hell, I know better than anyone that killing everyone who is or will be a threat in this world would be the smart thing to do. The easy thing to do. But is it so wrong for me to want to live in a better world? A world where everyone can just be good to each other. It's so obvious, at least to me. In reality, everything is connected. Everyone is connected. Wyatt lifted his head, his gaze lost in the mesmerizing dance of vibrant colors swirling in the air around him. This ethereal ballet was not a figment of his imagination, it was a vivid representation of the intricate web of existence that he could perceive with his unique abilities. Thanks to the inner workings of his powers, he had the rare gift of seeing beyond the tangible world, discerning the fundamental components of matter and the smallest atoms that comprised everything. Each line and hue he observed was a manifestation of the interconnectedness of all life. Humans, mutants, animals, insects, every organism, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, was interwoven in this vast tapestry of existence. There were even lines of dancing colors, strange atoms that were lost to even him, that he could not understand as well. While he understood how existence of life worked, he still didn't have all the answers. Even so, Wyatt understood that everyone's lives were not isolated threads but part of a larger narrative, a complex ecosystem where each being influenced the others in ways both seen and unseen. In this profound understanding, Wyatt grasped the essence of what truly mattered. At the end of it all, beyond the noise and chaos of daily life, every living being shared one essential truth: their existence was intertwined with one another. Each connection, each relationship, was a lifeline, grounding them in a shared reality where unity was the ultimate strength. The weight of this understanding settled within him, deepening his resolve to cherish and protect the delicate balance of life that surrounded him. Even those who would be better off dead due to their actions. Perhaps if he weren't able to see in such a molecular spectrum, Wyatt wouldn't be so adverse to killing. He wouldn't be so adverse to doing what was needed. To do what was easy. But he couldn't. Every life form had infinite potential for good. But also evil. It wasn't his call to decide if they lived or died. Because if he ever crossed that line, he doubted he would ever come back. He doubted he could still be the same person. He doubted he could still be good. Wyatt was afraid of the men he could become if he simply started killing everything and everyone he thought deserved it. And so, he refused to kill. No matter how much easier it would make his life if he simply did so. That was his choice. His decision. In the end, he would choose what he would do with his life and his power. And what he decided to do was help and protect those who lacked the power to do so. Was that the correct choice to make? Wyatt didn't know. But he would walk down that path with hope for the future. It's an old-fashioned dream. I know, but it's my dream, Wyatt said and stood to his feet, not realizing he had spent an hour sitting. In a flash of light, a bundle of flowers sat in a beautiful vase in front of the gravestone. Thanks for listening, Luigi. Next time, I'll bring Serena with me. Turning around, Wyatt left the cemetery. The weight on his shoulders felt a little lighter. Oh. Maximilian Zhukov was not a man to be crossed. Over the span of his 65 years of life, he had clawed his way to power. He had lost count of the number of lives he had trampled, fractured, and ended in his long career of crime. Killing came to him as naturally as breathing. It was no surprise to anyone when he established a large and unstoppable human trafficking operation 20 years ago. Such cruel acts, such as selling a human being to another for monetary gain, didn't affect him in the slightest. All that mattered to him was his money and power. As the years unfolded, Maximilian's wealth and reputation grew exponentially, creating an aura of both fear and respect that surrounded his name. To many, he was an untouchable figure in the shadowy underbelly of the city, a man whose very mention was enough to silence a room and instill a sense of reverence. However, this status was irrevocably shaken when a new name began to echo through the streets. The big man known to some as Wilson Fisk. This formidable newcomer rose to prominence in the criminal underworld with astonishing speed, amassing power and influence seemingly overnight. The sudden emergence of Fisk as a significant player transformed the landscape of organized crime, and it enraged Maximilian. Who did Wilson Fisk think he was? How could someone so new to the game challenge a legacy built over decades? The sheer audacity of his rapid ascent was unprecedented in their world, a realm where trust and loyalty meant everything, and alliances were painstakingly forged over time. Maximilian had received word from one of his trusted employees that Wilson was employing a variety of modern techniques and innovative approaches to expand his empire. His methods included leveraging the World Wide Web and advanced technology, allowing him to outmaneuver competitors with alarming efficiency. Maximilian couldn't help but scoff at these tactics. He had always been an old-school operator who preferred the tactile feel of pen and paper, meticulously documenting his resources and strategies in ink. Yet, he recognized that the tides of change often demanded adaptability. In moments when technology was necessary, he relied on his loyal, tech-savvy subordinate, whose expertise was vital for navigating this new era. Additionally, Maximilian's connections within the government provided a safety net, ensuring that their operations could remain under the radar and shielded from prying eyes. Despite the rising storm that Fisk represented, Maximilian was resolute. He believed that his own organization, built on years of hard work and dedication, still eclipsed Wilson's burgeoning ranks. As he surveyed his operations, he knew that the battle was far from over, and he was determined to safeguard his legacy against this uninvited rival. That was until Atomic appeared like a demon possessed. It all began one fateful night when Maximilian's usual weekly shipment of new product, over a dozen young girls, left port, bound for Nova Scotia and their yet-to-be futures with their new owners. Just as the ship sailed into the dark waters, a figure emerged from the night, Atomic. The hero of New York. A walking god among them. With a blend of skill and overwhelming power, Atomic swiftly neutralized Maximilian's armed men, dismantling their defenses as if they were nothing more than fragile toys. In a matter of minutes, the girls were freed from their captivity, and with a decisive command, Atomic turned the ship around, steering it back to port where a legion of police awaited to take down the human traffickers. If that had been the end of it, Maximilian might have endured the blow and rebuilt his losses. However, Atomic was relentless. The vigilante embarked on a crusade to uncover every last operation linked to Maximilian's nefarious activities. One by one, he unearthed ships laden with contraband, dismantled clandestine warehouses brimming with ill-gotten wealth, and placed hundreds of Maximilian's once loyal employees behind bars. It was a systematic destruction that left Maximilian's empire quaking on its last legs. As the days turned into weeks, the foundations of Maximilian's power began to crumble before his very eyes, each blow delivered by Atomic feeling more personal than the last. Then came a tipping point. Wilson Fisk, the notorious up-and-coming crime lord who smelled the weakness radiating off Maximilian's. Without wasting any time, Wilson moved in. With a swift strike, he stripped away what remained of Maximilian's influence and resources, leaving him with only a handful of fiercely devoted men, like Resnav, and mere scraps of his once glorious wealth. In his desperation, Maximilian resorted to reaching out to Senator Stern, a longtime customer and financial backer, hoping to secure his faltering empire. Initially, the senator's intervention seemed to breathe new life into Maximilian's ambitions, helping him claw back a fraction of his lost power and wealth. But just as his fortunes appeared to turn, fate intervened with an unexpected twist. Atomic was suddenly branded a terrorist and vanished from the city, leaving chaos in his wake. Recognizing this as a crucial turning point, Maximilian knew he had to act decisively. The opportunity to reclaim what was rightfully his was within reach, and he was determined to seize it, no matter the cost. With no Atomic to stop him, Maximilian regrew his empire rapidly with Stern's resources and government connections. All in return for first picking any future girls he planned to sell. This was no problem for Maximilian, especially considering that the younger ones, Stern's personal favorite, were easy to kidnap. But then came Atomic's highly publicized hearing on Capitol Hill, and everything began to unravel once again. The weight of his past involvement with the government-run facility in Nevada, overseen by the notorious McCarty, had finally caught up with Stearns. With his arrest, the support and resources that once flowed to Maximilian had vanished overnight. Stripped of his privileges, Maximilian relied solely on the meager foundation he had managed to build in an alarmingly short span of time. Despite the overbearing attention, Atomic returned to the city, his name cleared in a whirlwind of media coverage and public support. With unstoppable momentum, he unleashed a relentless wave of justice that swiftly dismantled the burgeoning crime syndicates that had begun to rise in his absence. Atomic was an unstoppable force, his power so overwhelming that crime bosses trembled at the thought of crossing his path, most chose to avoid him entirely, like a contagious disease. Maximilian, however, had no choice but to resign himself to this grim reality. He would swallow his pride and operate from the fringes, lurking in the shadows like a rat scuttling in a dark alley. The very thought of his fall from grace ignited a furious rage within him. It was a bitter pill to swallow, knowing he had sunk so low. Setting his glass of vodka down with a clink that echoed through his dimly lit office, Maximilian took a moment to absorb his surroundings. The space was a far cry from the opulent rooms he once occupied, filled with lavish furnishings and the hum of high-stakes business. Now, his office felt cramped and suffocating, a reflection of his diminished status and the tangled web of power dynamics that had turned against him. "Where is Resnav?" "He's late," Maximilian said to the two men who stood at attention beside the lone door of the room. Comrade Resnav said he was handling one of those vigilantes, one of the men, Nikolai, said. "That was 3 days ago." Maximilian frowned and leaned forward on his desk. "The daredevil, one of the pests that have been interfering with our business," he said with a glare. "Why hasn't Resnav reported back?" "I'm not sure, boss." "This isn't like Resnav," Nikolai said, pulling out his phone. "I'll call him and dash." The door to the room burst off its hinges as a figure in red and black dashed in. With quick movements, Daredevil took out both Nikolai and his partner before they could pull out their handguns. Maximilian was about to grab the AK-47 from beside his desk, but froze as his body levitated off the ground, surrounded by a red glow. He looked over to the door and glared hatefully at Atomic. You son of a bitch. You ruined me. You dare show yourself to me." Maximilian yelled as he tried to move his limbs to attack Atomic. "It's over, Maximilian," Atomic said as he tied him up with rope, just like he had done to the two unconscious men on the ground. "Over? This is far from over. You think I'll stop just because you've captured me? My power and influence may have weakened, but I still have friends in high places." Maximilian spat out as he glared at Atomic and Daredevil with as much hatred as he could muster. "You think these American prisons can hold me? I'll be out soon, and I'll find every last person you care about. And when I do, I'll get them and deliver their mutilated corpses to you. I'll make you suffer tenfold for what you've done to me." Atomic turned to Daredevil and stared. The man without fear sighed and nodded. "He's not lying. He means every word he said. "Then it's decided. After everything he's done, after everything we've seen, the fortress is what he deserves," Atomic said. "What are you two bastards?" Maximilian started, but his words were cut off as thick tape wrapped around his mouth. "I don't like this. If I allow you to do that, we're taking on the roles of judge, jury, and executioner. He deserves a real trial by the people to condemn him for his actions," Daredevil asserted as Atomic moved behind Maximilian's computer. "Eve, get me access." "I want everything," Atomic instructed, inserting a flash drive into the computer's USB port. "On it," Eve replied. Within a matter of minutes, the laptop screen was full of pictures showing off beaten and abused minors, women, and men as their bodies were shown off to interested buyers from across the world. Records of money transactions, evidence of bribes, and contact information to high-powered members of the city, police, and government were all displayed before Atomic. Maximilian is right. He knows a lot of powerful people who will help get him out of jail. A trial will only be a waste of time and resources. His computer holds too much blackmail on these people. They'll bend over backwards if it means all this doesn't go public, Atomic said. We know he's guilty. The horrors he's committed and ordered are real. I know this may not be the right thing to do in the eyes of the law, and it's not something we'll do for every criminal we come across. But the fortress is the solution for people like him, those who commit real evil. A real solution. Daredevil remained silent, his gaze directed away from the unfolding chaos around him. Years of rigorous law study and his dedication as a defense attorney echoed in his mind, urgently insisting that Atomic's proposed course of action was fundamentally flawed. Yet, deep within him, the very essence that defined him as Daredevil, a voice quietly but persistently argued that perhaps Atomic's solution was the only viable option. The law, a cornerstone of their society, was not always synonymous with justice. No amount of wishing could change that bitter truth. In his dual existence as a lawyer, both within the courtroom and beyond, Daredevil had witnessed the grim realities of an imperfect legal system. He had seen countless lives shattered as innocent individuals were ensnared in the web of legal machinations, suffering as affluent and well-connected lawyers skillfully maneuvered their clearly guilty clients out of accountability. He had even observed judges, once bastions of impartiality, swayed by the allure of corruption, their gavel strikes more reflective of personal gain than justice. Maximilian, despite the erosion of his power and the weight of his transgressions, still possessed a few aces up his sleeve. He was a master of survival in the criminal underworld, and it was only a matter of time before he would re-emerge from the shadows to reconstruct his empire. Walking up to the broken doorway, Daredevil paused. "Fine. We'll do things your way, at least this time." With his words spoken, the men without fear departed. Atomic nodded, aware that Daredevil sensed his movement from beyond the room. "Eve, release all of this to the public. Don't leave anyone involved out of it." "You got it," Eve replied, much to Maximilian's horror. The muffled screams of the men filled the room as Atomic approached him. Lifting Maximilian into the air with his powers, Atomic stared deep into his eyes. "Where you're going, no one will help you. You will answer for all your crimes, and you'll never see the light of day again, just like Resnav." Maximilian's eyes widened in fear as Atomic waved his hand, creating a large opening in the wall. With another wave, he fashioned a blindfold around the old Russian man's eyes. With one final muffled scream, Maximilian was carried across the skies of New York as Atomic flew him to the fortress of Solitude, where he would spend the remainder of his natural life. Chapter 46, Does he need CPR? When Wyatt finally delivered the news to Serena, that he had tracked down and imprisoned the men who had taken her father away, a charged silence enveloped them. The moment his words settled in her mind, Wyatt could see her face shift from incredulity to a torrent of emotions, and he felt a pang of sympathy as she crumpled into his arms, tears spilling down her cheeks like rain on parched earth. Wyatt held her close throughout it all, his heart aching alongside her, as they lingered in that embrace who knows how long. Eventually, he could feel the tremors of her sorrow subsiding, and he tried to offer words of comfort to help calm her. Nearby, Lucille and Daniel LaRusso exchanged glances, their expressions a complex mix of grief and relief. The air felt heavy with the implications of the revelation, but a quiet satisfaction began to blossom among them. Justice had been served for Luigi, and for all those who had suffered at the hands of those cruel men. Once Serena gathered enough strength to stand with her own strength, she took Wyatt by the hand and led him to the tranquil expanse of Hansen Dam Recreation Area. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow that enveloped the landscape like a soft blanket, while the evening breeze whispered through the leaves overhead. As they walked side by side along the winding trails, almost an hour slipped away without the exchange of a single word. Wyatt worried when Serena didn't press him for details about the confrontation with Maximilian and Resnav. She was not ready to delve into the realm of horror that those names conjured. Instead, she found a fragile peace in knowing that these men were finally locked away, their nefarious influences extinguished forever. When they finally reached the shoreline of Hansen Dam Lake, Serena paused to drink in the idyllic scene before her. The water shimmered beneath the dying light of the sun, casting a radiant glow that danced across the surface like a field of stars awakening to the twilight. Shades of deep orange and soft pink painted the sky, causing Serena to smile faintly. Standing there, breathless and entranced, she felt the burdens of the past begin to lift, if only for a moment, as she embraced the sense of closure that this beautiful sunset symbolized. "Are you going to be okay?" Wyatt asked, his face almost free of the injuries Resnav had inflicted. Only a few bandages remained. "I don't know," Serena replied. "I'm glad those men are gone. I really am. And I have you to thank for that. But I still miss him. I miss my dad. Life here is nice. I've made so many friends, and Daniel and Aunt Lucille have been incredibly supportive. Still, I can't forget that night, no matter how hard I try." Wyatt nodded and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Serena leaned in, resting her head against him. "I know. I can't either," Wyatt said. "But we have to try to move on and live our lives. I that know Luigi wouldn't want you to dwell on the past. He'd want you to go out, have fun, and create new memories. What about you? Atomic is always in the news, saving people and stopping natural disasters. When do you take the time to be Wyatt and live your life?" Serena asked. "I get it. I know you've done a lot of good, and the world is a better one with you in it. But I worry that you're forgetting to take care of yourself. Just look at your face, you have those bags under your eyes again." Wyatt groaned as Serena playfully pulled at his cheeks, a faint smile on her face. He let her do as she pleased, as long as it helped her smile again. "I've been having trouble sleeping lately." Wyatt paused, the memory of him beating Resnav's face repeatedly flashed in his mind. "I did something I regret. I know I shouldn't let it affect me, but it does. I'm struggling to move past it. Nodding, Serena pulled away and walked over to the lake. She bent down, picked up a pebble, and threw it across the water's surface. Wyatt watched as the pebble skipped before plopping into the lake. He appreciated that she didn't try to delve into what had happened. He wasn't sure he was ready to talk about that. Have you ever thought about stopping? Serena asked, throwing another rock. You could, stop being atomic and just be Wyatt. You've done more than enough, more than anyone. Don't you ever think about using your powers just for yourself? Deciding to join her, Wyatt started skimming stones as well. Sometimes, but I can't do that. My powers are a gift, a responsibility. If I don't use them to help when I know I can, it feels like all the terrible things that could happen would be on me. That's too much, Wyatt. You're only 17. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Let people like Tony Stark and all those other heroes popping up all over the world worry about that, Serena said, gripping the rock in her hand. I don't want to lose you, too. Wyatt looked down at the small rock in his hand, a frown forming on his face. No matter how much he longed for a carefree life, free of worries or crime fighting, he was already too entrenched in his mission to stop. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. His powers weren't meant for selfish use, they were meant for something greater. You won't lose me. I'm not that easy to kill, Wyatt joked, a flash of light enveloping the rock. Besides, I made a promise to Luigi at his funeral that I would always protect you. So no matter what, I won't die, at least not until I ensure you live a long and happy life. In the rock's place, a picture of Luigi and Serena appeared in an elegant wooden frame. The photo captured the two of them laughing as they painted Luigi's restaurant. Wyatt held out the picture to Serena, who accepted it with a small smile, tears starting to flow down her face. Thank you, Wyatt, Serena said, hugging him tightly while holding the picture frame. Thank you. Wyatt smiled and embraced her warmly. You're welcome. That's what I'm here for. Now then, Daniel mentioned recently that there's someone at your new school who's been trying to catch your eye. Want to talk about her? Serena laughed as she wiped her tears on Wyatt's hoodie, eliciting a groan from the young hero. Oh. Puente Antiguo, New Mexico. Driving through the quiet expanse of the night in a custom van equipped with cutting-edge technology, astrophysicist Jane Foster tapped rhythmically on her laptop keyboard. Beside her, Eric Selvig wore a patient expression, though the weariness etched on his face showed that his patience was wearing thin. In the driver's seat, Darcy Lewis gazed out at the starlit sky, her detached demeanor reflecting her boredom as she struggled to stay awake. After what felt like an eternity of typing, Jane finally shut off the van's bright lights, plunging them into a blanket of darkness. With an eager leap, she popped open the sunroof, clambering out with Eric trailing her like a reluctant shadow. He looked at her with a mix of concern and exasperation, the corners of his mouth twitching as he fought the urge to express just how tired he was. Yet, he couldn't help but be drawn to the vast expanse of the night sky, its stars twinkling like distant dreams. Wait for it, Jane said, excitement crackling in her voice, her eyes shining with anticipation. Can I turn on the radio? Darcy interjected, pressing her hands against her face in a futile attempt to ward off sleep, her voice tinged with irritation. Jane frowned, her focus unwavering. No. Jane, you can't keep doing this, Eric sighed deeply, glancing over at her as they waited in the oppressive silence, the weight of anticipation hanging thick in the air. His eyes reflected a mix of concern and weariness, particularly as the seconds dragged by without any sign of the phenomenon she had promised. Undeterred by the quiet that enveloped them, Jane climbed back inside the van, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she immersed herself in her work once again. The last 17 occurrences have been predictable to the last second. I know it'll happen, she asserted, flipping through the well-worn pages of her notebook filled with data, sketches, and graphs collected over years of research. Jane, you're an astrophysicist, not some storm chaser, Eric said, his voice a blend of concern and disbelief. I'm telling you there's a connection between these atmospheric disturbances and my research. Jane insisted, passion infusing her words as she rifled through her notes, her determination evident. Eric, I wouldn't have asked you to fly all the way out here if I wasn't absolutely sure of my findings. Meanwhile, Darcy continued to stare up at the heavens, her eyelids heavy with fatigue. Suddenly, something in the night sky captured her attention, a flicker of light moved through the stars, an anomaly among the familiar constellations that prompted her to blink in surprise. Jane. I think you might want to see this, Darcy uttered as she watched the once dark sky dance with brilliant colors and thunder. What is that? Jane said as she and Eric stepped out of the sunroof once more. I thought you said it was a subtle aurora. Eric said as he examined the intricate lines among the stars. Not willing to let this opportunity go, Jane jumped back inside the van and grabbed Darcy's arm. Go. Get closer. Right. Good one, Darcy said as she tried to ignore the near-fanatical look in her mentor's eyes. Go. Jane yelled, and Darcy, against her better judgment, stomped on the gas pedal. The van jolted forward, its worn wheels kicking up a flurry of dust as Darcy pressed the accelerator. She raced after the mesmerizing spectacle before her, a swirling mass of vibrant colors and pulsating lights that seemed to beckon her closer. As she grew closer, a deafening crack of thunder shattered through the night. In an instant, a tornado dropped from the sky, an ominous column of chaos churned violently as it descended, creating a thunderous roar rivaling the storm itself. The air crackled with energy as the cyclone ripped into the earth, sending torrents of dust and debris swirling skyward in a frenzy. The very ground trembled under its power, filling the atmosphere with the acrid smell of scorched earth and wild winds. Panic surged through Darcy's veins as she locked eyes on the twisting vortex, its whirlwind of destruction looming ominously. Without thinking, she slammed the brake pedal down with all her might, the van screeching to a halt as it skidded precariously across the dirt-strewn ground. Dust billowed in her wake, obscuring everyone's view and enveloping the van in a thick, choking cloud as the storm raged on, nature's fury painting the sky with chaos and danger. "What are you doing?" Jane asked as she tried to record the wild phenomenon in front of her. "I am not dying for 6 college credits." Darcy yelled as she held up her hands, refusing to drive any further for her crazy mentor. Jane turned back to the roiling tornado, her heart racing with a mix of exhilaration and fear. She inched closer to Darcy, the tension palpable in the cramped space of the van. With a determined shift, her leg pressed down on the gas pedal, while her fingers gripped the steering wheel with a fierce intensity. The van surged forward, plowing through swirling clouds of debris as flashes of lightning illuminated the chaotic scene outside. As they barreled toward the monstrous vortex, Darcy and Eric exchanged anxious glances, trying to maintain a facade of calm amid the whirlwind of dirt and chaos that enveloped them. The van's interior throbbed with both the engine's hum and the storm's distant roar. "Jane! Stop this!" Eric yelled. In her reckless excitement, Jane lost track of her speed. Suddenly, a shadowy figure materialized in the midst of the swirling tempest, a fleeting glimpse that sent a jolt of panic through her. Before she could react, a thunderous clang reverberated through the van, shaking its very frame. Jane's heart dropped as she realized she had inadvertently struck what she thought was a person caught in the eye of the supernatural storm. "I think that was legally your fault," Darcy muttered as everyone exited the van. "Get the first aid kit," Jane said as she ran up to the man on the ground. He wasn't moving. "Do me a favor and don't be dead." "Whoa. Does he need CPR?" "Because I totally know CPR." Darcy exclaimed, her voice a mix of concern and excitement. With a first aid kit clutched tightly in her hands, Darcy dashed over to the unconscious man, her breath catching as she took in the sight of his appearance as he was sprawled on the ground. He was strikingly handsome, with long, golden locks cascading down to frame his chiseled face. His impeccably maintained beard added a rugged charm to his well-defined features, highlighting his strong cheekbones and perfectly sculpted jawline. Beneath the fitted shirt that clung to his torso, muscles rippled with the promise of strength, making it hard for Darcy to focus on anything else. "Where did he come from?" Jane asked, ignoring Darcy's comment and prolonged staring session. "Hey, man. You all right?" Darcy asked the unconscious man, only to squeak when he stood up as if a van hadn't just struck him. "Hammer. Hammer," the man muttered as he walked around in a daze. "Yeah, we can tell you're hammered. It's pretty obvious," Darcy said as she eyed the man warily, no longer distracted by his appearance. "Oh, my God. Eric, look at this. We have to move quickly before everything changes." Seeing that the man was at least alive, Jane refocused on her work and examined the significant, intricate markings on the ground. "Jane, we have to take him to the hospital," Eric said as he shook his head at Jane's dismissal of the men she had run over. "Father." The man yelled up to the heavens, his face scrunched in anger. "Heimdall. I know you can hear me. Open the Bifrost. See. He's fine," Jane said as she snapped several pictures on her phone. "You. What realm is this?" "Alfheim." "Nornheim," the man asked, turning to Eric, Jane, and Darcy, his body tight with hidden aggression. "New Mexico," Darcy said carefully and took out her taser from her pouch. "You dare threaten me, Thor, with so puny a weapon," Thor said, but immediately began to spasm as Darcy shot him with her taser. As his last convulsion ended, Thor fell to the ground. Truly unconscious. This earned shocked looks from Eric and Jane. "What? He was freaking me out," Darcy said as she motioned to Thor. Eric let out an exasperated groan, his patience wearing thin as he dealt with the 2 eccentric women beside him, their frantic chatter filling the air with tension. He grabbed Thor's arm, dragging him toward the battered van. The engine roared to life as Eric threw the door open, carefully assisting Thor into the back seat with Darcy's help, anxiety clawing at his chest. As they sped away, tires screeching against the dirt, they were blissfully unaware of a brilliant, fiery object streaking through the night sky. It hurtled downwards with a brilliant flash, crashing to Earth several kilometers away, the Earth shuddering slightly under its impact, leaving only the faintest echo of its descent behind. Chapter 47, Kimchi Fried Rice. Seoul, South Korea. Mira sighed heavily as she scrolled through her phone. Each bump and sway of the Seoul Metro subway caused her body to sway. The subway rattled along the tracks, the rhythmic jolt of its movement helped distract her from her thoughts. Mira is an 18-year-old young woman with upper thigh-length hot pink hair styled in two twintails and two middle-parted side locks framing her face. Her bright appearance had gained her several disapproving looks from those older than her and entranced glances from her peers. Today, Mira rode the subway for a single, uncomplicated reason: to escape her overbearing and controlling family. She couldn't handle their disappointing stares and words of disappointment. She couldn't take any more of it all and decided to mindlessly ride the subway for hours. Black sheep, everyone called her. How utterly ridiculous. So what if she yearned to be different? To embrace her true self? Why did her desire for individuality transform her into a problem child in the eyes of her parents and those all around her? Mira wasn't ignorant. She understood why all too well. They wanted her to conform into the fabric of their uptight society, to keep her head down and blend in. To them, having a daughter who dressed in vibrant colors or sported an eccentric style of dark attire, one who seemed to care little about societal opinions, was a source of shame that marred their reputation. If it weren't for her perfect brother, Mira was sure her parents would have been utterly unbearable. Just wait. As soon as I can, I'm out of there, Mira muttered quietly, her gaze drifting to the other passengers seated around her. Each face was a portrait of silence, their expressions were simple and no expressive, they were living embodiments of the obedient image their society demanded. It made her heart ache, not for them, but for herself. A stray thought flickered through her mind, igniting a spark of doubt. Was she really the problem? The subway lurched violently, pulling her back to reality as she grasped the nearest handlebar, her knuckles turning white with tension. A haunting screech of the subway's brakes echoed in her ears, drowning out the hurried yells of her fellow passengers. Panic rippled through the car, erupting in a wave of screams and yells as the subway began to tilt ominously. Myra's eyes widened in horror as she looked toward the windows, her breath hitching in her throat. Outside, disaster unfolded before her. A large section of the Dongsan railway bridge had spectacularly collapsed into the roaring waters below. Now leaning precariously forward, the subway leaned dangerously toward the edge as the ground beneath them slipped away. We're going to die. Help. Help me. Hold on to me. Hold on to, Mommy. Mira looked around as the passengers strained to hold tight or scramble towards the subway car behind them. At the precarious angle they were hanging, those who attempted to climb only slipped, sliding helplessly towards the front of the car. Am I going to die? Mira thought, her grip on the handlebars tightening so fiercely that her knuckles turned a ghostly white. Behind them, the coupling of their subway car strained and groaned, desperately trying to support the weight of two entire cars dangling precariously in the air. With a deafening crack that echoed like thunder, the coupling broke, and the front section of the subway plunged toward the churning waters below. Mira braced herself, shutting her eyes as gut-wrenching screams filled her ears. She could do nothing but wait for the inevitable to happen. But then, after what felt like an eternity, something miraculous occurred. Mira opened her eyes, bewildered, as she saw her subway car suspended midair, defying gravity. The panic screams transformed into stunned silence as every passenger turned to gaze out of the windows in awe. They were floating. What the hell? Mira whispered, disbelief flooding through her. Tentatively, she released the handlebars and approached the window. Her heart raced as she vaguely recognized the red and white figure soaring below the subway. Who? Look, Amma. It's Atomic, a young boy exclaimed, tugging at his mother's shirt in sheer excitement. Isn't that the American hero you love to watch? We're saved, she gasped as hope bloomed in her chest. As cheers erupted in the subway car, the heroic Atomic defied the odds, lifting their section of the train with little effort. With a small gesture, he pointed toward the waters below. In a dazzling display of red light, he summoned a massive glob of water, swirling it upward to mend the shattered bridge in a breathtaking spectacle of matter transmutation. After a few seconds, the bridge was restored to its former glory, as if the disaster had never even occurred. The passengers erupted in happiness, their fears washed away by overwhelming relief. After repairing the bridge, Atomic placed the subway back on the tracks and reattached it to the now fixed coupling. Mira watched as Atomic gracefully floated over to her subway car. The fabrics of his red and white costume seemed to glow under the bright sunlight. With a confident wave of his hand, the door slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing the now hushed interior of the subway, a stark contrast to the chaotic sounds that had flooded the car just moments before. Atomic stepped inside the now silent car, commanding the attention of all the passengers. As he moved among them, Atomic spoke in Korean, his voice echoing gently in the confined space. Is everyone okay? Anyone hurt? Atomic asked. The passengers, hardly believing that a renowned American superhero could communicate in their language, felt relief wash over them. Excitement bubbled as they eagerly expressed their gratitude, their voices a mix of admiration and awe. Atomic moved purposefully from person to person, checking for injuries that may have occurred from the near-fatal accident. He knelt beside the first group, scanning their faces for signs of distress. His hands were steady and reassuring as he gently placed a hand on the shoulder of a trembling teenager. With each interaction, he not only treated any physical injuries but also helped those who were shaken to calm down. Finally, he reached Mira, who took a step back at the mere presence Atomic exuded. "Does it hurt?" Atomic asked. "What?" Mira said as she scrunched up her eyebrows in confusion. "Your wrist." "It's beginning to swell," Atomic said, motioning to her hand. Mira looked down and noticed her swollen wrist. It pulsed with an angry red tint. It seemed that her wrist had absorbed the violent jerk during the subway's drop when she was nearly flung forward from the momentum. It was only thanks to her adrenaline that kept the pain at bay, but now that adrenaline was fading, the pulses became stronger and stronger, sending pangs of pain up her arm. "Ouch." Mira groaned as she moved her hand. "Easy. You don't want to aggravate the injury anymore." "Can I?" Atomic said as he motioned to her wrist. Mira, not having any real reason to refuse, nodded. Atomic gently held her hand and wrist. After a brief moment, a flash of light danced over her arm. Mira watched in awe as a red wrist brace, matching her hair, materialized. "You have a grade 2 ligament injury. Thankfully, it shouldn't take too long to heal as long as you don't try to move your hand too much. This wrist brace should help. Just try to take it easy for a while." "Okay." Atomic said with a calm and gentle voice. "Okay," Mira said slowly as she took her hand back, still in shock at everything that had happened. "Thank you." Atomic nodded and proceeded to assist the next person. After ensuring that everyone on board was taken care of, he turned his attention to the conductor. Unfortunately, the man was unconscious, having hit his head during the subway's fall. After making sure the man would be okay, Atomic used his powers to move the subway across the tracks until they reached the nearest station. There, a small army of police, ambulances, and news stations awaited. Mira stepped off the subway and looked up to see Atomic salute at everyone below before flying away. Hungry reporters clamored for an interview with Atomic, their microphones thrust forward into the air in hopes he would return. Paramedics in bright uniforms rushed past, their minds focused on tending to the subway's shaken passengers, while police officers moved purposefully around the scene, carefully gathering statements with a practiced professionalism. With a small frown tugging at her lips, Mira turned her gaze down to her wrist brace, a reminder of the narrow escape she had just made. The weight of the accident hung heavily in her thoughts, a stark realization of how precariously life could tip from the mundane to dangerous in an instant. This brush with death had ignited a flame within her. No longer would she allow the expectations of her parents or the judgments of others to dictate her path. Mira would embrace the life she desired, unafraid to pursue her passions and to be true to herself. With a resolute smile breaking through the remnants of her worries, she lifted her gaze once more to the open expanse above, her eyes tracing the soft contours of the fluffy clouds drifting lazily by. Little did Mira know, in just a year's time, her world, along with the fates of 2 other young girls, would be forever transformed in ways she could never imagine. Oh. You're ridiculous," Serena sighed as she expertly chopped an onion. Wyatt smiled sheepishly and lifted a grocery bag with bright Korean characters. "What? How so?" he asked. "When you said you were going to get some kimchi, I thought you were going to the store down the street, not to another country. You said you wanted to try making kimchi fried rice tonight. What's better than authentically made kimchi from its home country?" Wyatt replied as he pulled out a large bottle of kimchi. "Only you can justify a 12-hour flight for kimchi," Serena said, moving on to prepare the next part of dinner. "More like around 2 hours. Flying in orbit at around Mach 4 makes the trip a lot faster," he said confidently. "That's not the, never mind," Serena sighed, realizing that arguing with Wyatt wouldn't go anywhere. On the kitchen counter sat a small television set, a news report could be heard retelling the events of the near-fatal subway accident. "Still, your trip to South Korea ended up being a good thing. If it weren't for you, a lot of people could have gotten hurt." "I don't know. I'm sure Korea's first responders would have gotten there to help," Wyatt said as he pulled out a bag of shrimp chips. With a soft pop, he opened it and began to eat a few. "I hear they're pretty quick and efficient over there. You know, this noble and humble attitude of yours is starting to annoy me. Would it kill you to be proud of your accomplishments? You're a freaking superhero for Christ's sake," Serena said as she walked to the fridge to pull out the rice she made yesterday for tonight's meal. "The way you talk makes me want to kick you." Wyatt sighed and shook his head. "Please don't. What are you two talking about?" Daniel asked as he walked into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water. "Whoa. What are you making for dinner, Serena?" "Kimchi fried rice," Serena replied as she grabbed a wok from one of the kitchen's bottom cabinets. "Mr. Miyagi mentioned he hasn't had it in a long time, so I thought I'd make some for him. Hopefully, he'll like it." That's really thoughtful of you. I'm sure he'll appreciate it, Daniel said as he sat beside Wyatt, grimacing slightly. Are you all right? Wyatt asked. Yeah, I'm fine. I guess my body is taking longer to heal after our spar this morning, Daniel chuckled, rubbing his injured side. Still, you should consider learning Miyagi-Do. It could help round out your fighting style. While being aggressive may work for now, someday you'll face an opponent who will get past that. Defense will be your greatest asset on that day. Karate, huh? I might take you up on that the next time I visit, Wyatt replied. How's it going at the car dealership? Are you making any sales? When Wyatt traveled to California to deliver the news of Maximilian and Resnav's capture to Serena, he decided to extend his visit to a week, eager to spend quality time with her and her new family. During this time, Wyatt quickly grew close to the LaRusso family, who welcomed him into their warm, modest home with open arms. Daniel, a 22-year-old young man with an impressive 5th-degree black belt in karate, stood out as a remarkable new presence in Serena's life. Daniel took it upon himself to mentor Serena in karate, with the guidance of his wise sensei, Nariyoshi Keisuke Miyagi. The aged sensei imparted a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to both Daniel and Serena, nurturing their skills and fostering their understanding of martial arts beyond mere physicality. Over the week, Wyatt cherished his time with Serena, exploring the picturesque valley and surrounding areas of California. Their days were filled with adventure, from hiking scenic trails to visiting local cafes buzzing with life. In the afternoons, Wyatt and Daniel would spend hours sparring at the Miyagi-Do dojo, pushing each other to grow and refine their techniques. Despite being trained by one of the greatest fighters in history, Wyatt often found himself on the defensive against Daniel, who displayed a mastery of his craft that was both impressive and humbling. Out of their 12 sparring sessions, Wyatt had only managed to claim victory 5 times, but each defeat deepened his respect for Daniel, and their shared love for martial arts forged a strong bond between them. In an effort to show his appreciation for the LaRusso's hospitality, Wyatt offered to help Lucille around the house, even though she insisted his assistance was unnecessary. Regardless, he took the initiative to discreetly upgrade and repair several items around their cozy home, finding joy in the simple acts of service. Despite enjoying his time with Serena and the LaRussos, Wyatt still donned his suit and ventured out as Atomic, flying off and going where he was needed while Serena struggled to cover for his mysterious absences. Although curious, the LaRusso family chose not to pry into his enigmatic life, respecting his privacy while quietly accepting him as one of their own. As the week drew to a close, Wyatt found himself a little confused. He had grown fond of the LaRusso family, embracing their warmth and camaraderie, but a nagging feeling lingered, like he had seen them somewhere before. In addition to spending time with the LaRusso family, Wyatt made it a point to visit Burbank to see Zoe, one of his newer friends. As he got to know her better, he discovered she was a whirlwind of energy and creativity, always in motion and radiating enthusiasm. Zoe shared snippets of lyrics she had been crafting, captivating Wyatt with her natural talent and infectious passion. This glimpse into her artistic world deepened their bond as he found himself enjoying her music recommendations, especially as she took him to well-known spots in Burbank where rap battles often took place. In those battles, she would quickly join in and often than not emerge victorious. Wyatt greatly enjoyed spending time with Zoe. She was a breath of fresh air and she helped him forget his worries as a hero. As Wyatt spoke with Daniel, his phone began to ring with a distinct ringtone. Excusing himself, Wyatt quickly stepped outside to answer the call. "Hello," Wyatt said. "Wyatt. I need your help. How fast can you get to New Mexico?" Phil Coulson said, almost breathless on the other end of the line. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, Wyatt replied, and in an instant, he shot up into the sky, his suit morphing around him. Having seen Wyatt fly away from the kitchen window, Serena sighed and wondered what excuse she would come up with this time. "Anne, hello, just a quick update. I want to let everyone know that I am going back to the start of the story to touch up and fix some of the earlier chapters to help them mesh better with the direction I'm taking the story. In the beginning, I didn't really have the greatest idea on where I was taking the story, so they were a bit rough. Hopefully as I edit them all, the story will be a much more cohesive experience. The edits and changes won't be too radical, but if any of you want to go back and reread the chapters to check out what I did, I'd appreciate it. All the edited chapters will have a edited next to the title so you can tell which have been updated and which have not. You may need to refresh the chapter a few times for it to update." Chapter 48, The Destroyer. In the past few days, Phil Coulson has found himself ensnared in an exhausting series of tumultuous events that would challenge even the most resilient of agents. As a veteran operative of S.H.I.E.L.D., he is well acquainted with chaos, having spent his career navigating a precarious world filled with bizarre occurrences. He has encountered everything from eccentric billionaires wielding highly advanced technology to gamma-powered scientists capable of splitting cities in half. Phil had even met an individual capable of twisting literal atoms into anything he desired. But most recently, Phil became aware that one of his longtime heroes, a legend frozen in time, had returned to the present. Each of these encounters has sharpened his instincts and honed his ability to adapt to the unpredictable. But even Phil experienced a pang of incredulity when he arrived in New Mexico to investigate a peculiar astronomical disturbance that had piqued the interest of S.H.I.E.L.'s upper echelons. The sight that greeted him was nothing short of odd, a vast crater cradling an unmoving hammer that seemed like something straight out of a mythological tale. The locals had taken to this extraordinary phenomenon with a mix of reverence and curiosity, turning the hammer into a playful contest to see who among them had the strength to lift it. After securing the immediate area, Coulson dove into the task of gathering any intelligence regarding the event. This brought him to Jane Foster's research, which harbored invaluable insights into the extraordinary weather phenomena. As he seized through her meticulous notes and data, he felt a small twinge of guilt. He recognized the dedication and passion she had poured into her work. Yet, he was acutely aware of his duty, and the urgency of his mission overshadowed his reservations. He knew that sometimes the greater good required sacrifice, even if it meant stepping on personal aspirations. The day's events took a surreal turn when an astonishingly powerful and skillful blonde man crashed through the defenses surrounding the enigmatic hammer. It became readily apparent that this man was not simply an ordinary intruder. His every movement was infused with an unyielding determination and ability that rendered Coulson's highly skilled team almost impotent in their attempts to subdue him. Phil watched in a mix of wonder and unease as the unknown man unleashed his might to reach the hammer. Amid the chaos, Coulson faced a critical choice: should he signal to Clint Barton to neutralize the potential threat, or should he hold back and observe? Something about the man's fervor struck a chord within him, igniting a curiosity that outweighed his instincts for caution. Could this mysterious blonde man have the answers to the hammer? The answer ended up being a disappointing no. With the men now in custody, it didn't take long for the renowned astrophysicist Eric Selvig to arrive, urgency etched on his face as he pleaded for the alleged Donald Blake's release. Despite his better judgment and the nagging feeling that they might be concealing critical information, perhaps even the key to the mighty hammer, Phil set both men free. However, the following day brought far more dire news. Massive energy disturbances had erupted across the desert landscape of New Mexico, crackling through the air with a menacing intensity. Recognizing the immediate threat, Phil swiftly assembled a team of skilled agents, determined to investigate the source of these anomalies. They drove deep into the arid wilderness, the sun blaring overhead, unaware of the chaos that awaited them. What Phil anticipated finding, a natural phenomenon or bizarre scientific occurrence, quickly evaporated upon their arrival. Instead, they were confronted by a colossal suit of sentient armor, an eerie construct that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. This metallic behemoth, which he would later learn was named as the Destroyer, unleashed a torrent of destructive energy beams, effortlessly dismantling their vehicles in mere moments. The overwhelming power of the Destroyer was staggering, and it soon became clear that its destructive capabilities were far beyond anything Phil and his team had ever encountered or prepared for. Surprisingly, the automaton didn't seem intent on eliminating the agents but rather focused its wrath on the vehicles, their only means of escape. This spared Phil's team but did nothing to alleviate the rising tide of anxiety in his chest. As he stood amidst the wreckage, eyes fixed on the unrelenting advancing figure of the Destroyer, dread washed over him. The mechanized menace was now lumbering toward the small town nestled in the distance, home to several vulnerable civilians who had no means to defend themselves against such an insatiable force of destruction. Without a moment's hesitation, Phil sprang into action. He knew exactly whom to call, the best person for this precarious situation. A skilled ally he trusted implicitly, capable of responding swiftly and decisively to protect the innocent lives at stake. Time was of the essence, and every second counted as he dialed the number that could mean the difference between catastrophe and safety. "Hello. Wyatt Wilkins, aka Atomic," said from the other line. "Wyatt. I need your help," Phil said as he looked around at the flaming vehicles surrounding him. His men were picking themselves up, grunting in pain from the blowback of the Destroyer's blast. "How fast can you get to New Mexico?" "I'll be there in 10 minutes, Wyatt replied without hesitation. Intense wind swept over his line before it vanished. "Fill me in on the situation." Phil smiled and briefed him. When he finished, he ended the call and turned to watch the Destroyer armor continue its slow march toward the town. "Who was that?" Jasper Sitwell asked as he walked up to Phil, his once pristine suit now charred. "A friend," Phil said with a smile before turning to his men. "Okay, people. This isn't over yet. Let's move." Oh. The town of Puente Antigua was engulfed in a maelstrom of destruction and chaos. Explosions echoed through the air as the Titanic Destroyer unleashed its rampage on everything in its path. Buildings crumbled beneath its relentless march, vehicles were tossed aside like mere toys, and the streets became a hellish landscape of rubble and flames. The sky was choked with smoke, casting an ominous shadow over the frantic scene, all as it executed its master's sinister directive with mechanical precision. Yet, amid the pandemonium, Puente Antigua was not entirely defenseless. The Warriors 3, valiant champions of Asgard, and the fierce Lady Sif orchestrated a cunning strategy to confront the towering menace, while Jane, Eric, and Darcy worked alongside a now mortal Thor to guide the panicked townsfolk to safety. Despite their immense strength and centuries of battle experience, the Asgardian warriors struggled against the destroyer's strength. The destroyer was no ordinary automaton, it was a creation forged by Odin himself, crafted from a mysterious, powerful metal imbued with ancient magic. Designed to guard the divine vault of Asgard and relentlessly hunt down any target assigned to it, the destroyer was more than a sentinel, it was a relentless force of nature. Odin had summoned the power of the other Skyfathers, infusing the armor with an array of cosmic might, resulting in a virtually all-powerful entity. With its remarkable strength, impenetrable durability, and devastating energy blasts, the destroyer was a daunting adversary. The very essence of its being allowed for body manipulation and sensory scrying, heightening its threat level beyond comprehension. To exacerbate the dire situation, the armor's resilience was far superior to that of Uru, the very metal that constructed legendary weapons like Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, and Odin's spear, Gungnir. Facing the destroyer was like standing before an unstoppable storm, a force that had been designed for one singular purpose, destruction. Facing the destroyer in combat was equal to signing your own death warrant. Volstagg slowly stood to his feet with a groan, his body racked with pain. He leaned on one of the diner's battered tables to steady himself, only to look up at the destroyer staring him down. Before he could move, the automaton unleashed a blast of energy that blew up the dinner, launching Volstagg into the streets in a ball of fire and glass. The Asgardian fell into a wooden bench, unconscious. Panting behind a parked car, Sif gasped as she pressed her hand against her bleeding side in agony. Upon seeing Volstagg's unconscious body, she glared at the destroyer and was about to rush toward the automaton, but Thor held her back. Go. Now. Run. Sif, you've done all you can, Thor urged, desperate to prevent his friend from rushing into certain death. No. I will die a warrior's death. Stories will be told of this day, Sif declared, preparing to push Thor aside. Given his current mortal state, it would have been an easy task, but Thor's following words stopped her. No, Sif. Live. Live, and tell those stories yourself, he said sincerely, astonishing Sif with how much he had changed during his time on Earth. Just then, Thor turned his head to see the destroyer unleash another blast in their direction. Now, go. After pushing Sif away, he rolled forward to evade the blast. A loud explosion shook the ground behind him as the vehicle Sif had been using for cover flipped through the air. Pushing himself up, Thor ran toward where Fandral and Hogun were helping Volstagg to his feet. You must return to Asgard. You have to stop Loki. Thor urged upon reaching the three. What about you? Fandral asked. Do not worry, my friends. I have a plan, Thor replied with a confident smile, an expression the warriors three knew all too well. Come on. We need to fall back. Come on, come on. Fandral shouted as he and his fellow warriors rushed to Sif, Jane, Eric, and Darcy. As they turned to run, Jane glanced back and saw Thor drop the shield he had been holding. Wait. What's he doing? Jane said, worried at seeing Thor walking up to the destroyer without fear. Brother, whatever I have done to wrong you, whatever I have done to lead you to do this, I am truly sorry. But these people are innocent. Taking their lives will gain you nothing, Thor said as he stood mere feet away from the destroyer, knowing full well that Loki, his brother in Asgard, was listening through the destroyer's sensory scrying. He meant every word he said to his brother. His time on Earth with Jane, Eric, and Darcy had truly changed him. So take mine, and end this. The destroyer's movement stilled, the fierce energy that once crackled behind its face armor dissipating as the dark facade shifted inward, as if accepting Thor's words. Thor remained steadfast with a resolute smile, believing his heartfelt words had pierced through the chaos to reach his brother's core. However, the destroyer pivoted, as if to retreat, only to unleash a heart-stopping strike aimed directly at Thor. Its arm swung with lethal intent, a single blow from its form would be strong enough to kill the mortal Thor indefinitely. In that fleeting moment before the destroyer's strike could reach Thor, a vibrant tendril of crimson energy shot forth, yanking Thor to safety just as the destructive strike struck thin air. In a dizzying blaze of red and white, Atomic surged forward, colliding with the destroyer in an explosive impact that sent the Sentinel tumbling 10 yards down the street, the sound of their clash echoing like thunder. As the tendril withdrew, Thor stood at a distance, trying to understand what had just happened. He gazed up at Atomic's billowing white cape. Even after getting hit with 100 tons of force from Star Rage, not even a scratch, Atomic said and looked down at his steaming right fist. This won't be easy. With a deafening hum of energy, the destroyer rose to its full terrifying height, the plates of its face shield shifting ominously. In that instant, it unleashed a devastating blast aimed at Atomic. Anne, quick question, based on what you've read and understood about Wyatt so far, do you think that he is worthy of lifting Mjolnir? Chapter 49, not even a scratch. Anne, here's another chapter considering we made to our 600 PS for last week. I decided to upload it today due to me forgetting to upload it yesterday for everyone. Sorry about that and please enjoy. Even after getting hit with 100 tons of force from star rage, not even a scratch, Atomic said and looked down at his steaming right fist. This won't be easy. The destroyer loomed ominously, its metallic form shimmering as it stood to its full height. The intricate plates of its face shield shifted with a mechanical whir, revealing a pair of glowing eyes that flickered to life like angry embers. With a thunderous hum of energy reverberating through the air, it unleashed a devastating beam, slicing through the town towards Atomic. From when he had soared through the sky on his way to the town, Atomic had already mapped out his surroundings, keenly aware of Jane, Eric, Darcy, the Warriors 3, and Sif standing perilously close to the path of the destroyer's incoming lethal blast. I was hoping to have dematerialized the destroyer on the first strike, but whatever magic Odin added to it makes it so I can't affect it on an atomic level. Atomic thought and raised both arms, creating 3 large, thick walls made of adamantium. Maybe I should have let it attack Thor so he could defeat it like in the movie. But what guarantee was there that he would stand up like before? This universe is already so different that I couldn't risk his life on an assumption. A cataclysmic boom resonated throughout the town as the destroyer's beam collided with the first adamantium wall. The structure groaned under the pressure but stood resolute, at least for a moment. Gradually, the intense energy began to melt through, creating a searing hole that threatened the integrity of the second wall. Move out of the way. Atomic shouted urgently at the group behind him, his voice a frantic blend of command and desperation. Listen to him. Hurry. Thor yelled as he waved his arms to the side, prompting his friends to run away. The destroyer is much too powerful for any mortal to defeat. You must run away. He yelled at Atomic. That may be, but I have to get it away from the town. Atomic yelled back and flew up into the air toward the destroyer. With a powerful burst, he ascended higher into the sky, angling himself towards the destroyer. Stop. You fool. Thor yelled. The destroyer, noticing its new target flying in the air, tilted its head menacingly, preparing to unleash another devastating blast at Atomic. In a graceful spin, Atomic evaded the searing beam and sent tendrils of energy lashing out towards the automaton, ensnaring the armor in several layers of glowing ropes. With a roar that of effort, Atomic surged skyward and carried the relentless destroyer into the sky alongside him. Reaching down to the rope constructs holding it captive, the destroyer ripped them off its body with ease. As the destroyer plummeted from the sky, unanchored and unable to soar, it hurtled downwards like a stone released from a great height. In a stunning display of speed and power, Atomic shot through the air, his body a blur, and slammed a fist construct the size of a small house into the destroyer. The impact reverberated through the atmosphere, sending the metallic behemoth flying back 20 kilometers, leaving a trail of chaos in its wake. Not one to retreat after a single blow, Atomic surged forward once more, encircling the destroyer in a swirling, luminescent sphere of fluoroantimonic acid. As the viscous liquid enveloped the armored figure, it became apparent that the acid was having little to no effect. Frustration coursed through him, and Atomic waved his hand, transforming the caustic acid into azidoazide, a compound renowned for its explosive potential. With a snap, Atomic ignited the volatile substance. The resulting explosion lit up the sky, a blinding flash followed by a thunderous roar that sent shockwaves rippling through the ground. The destroyer was violently hurled downward, crashing into the earth with a tremendous impact that shook the very foundations of the landscape. Please tell me that did something, Atomic muttered as he tried to look through the clouds of dust. Emerging from the swirling dust clouds, the destroyer rose with an imposing presence, stepping confidently out of the massive crater it had carved into the earth. Its form was strikingly pristine, unmarred by any scratches or burns. This is going to be a long day. Atomic muttered and promptly dodged an incoming blast. Oh. On the outskirts of the small town of Puente Antiguo, the residents stood frozen in disbelief as a massive explosion erupted in the distance, sending shockwaves rippling through the ground beneath their feet. The air crackled with tension, punctuated by the resounding boom that followed a mysterious object plummeting from the sky, shaking the very earth they stood on. Wide-eyed and breathless, they beheld beams of radiant golden energy illuminating the darkening sky, while enormous crimson constructs materialized seemingly out of nowhere, crashing to the ground with an earth-shattering force. What's going on? What was that thing? An aged man muttered, his weathered face etched with worry as another explosion lit up the horizon. It looked like some sort of man in a suit of armor. Like Iron Man. But this guy was blasting up the town when a bunch of people in cosplay showed up to fight it. They put up a good fight but they couldn't bring down the guy. But then Atomic swooped in and carried that thing out of the town, one of the servers from the local dinner said. At least that thing won't destroy any more of the town. Yeah, but, can Atomic even beat that thing? A man with a large belly asked as another tremor struck the ground. It's unstoppable. Silence hung heavy in the air as nobody dared to answer. Each face reflected a mix of uncertainty and fear, yet a flicker of hope lingered, a collective hope that somehow, against all odds, Atomic would manage to triumph. Meanwhile, in a speeding truck racing through the desolate desert, Jane gripped the steering wheel tightly, glancing sideways at Thor, who looked resolute despite the chaos unfolding behind them. In the back seat, Eric and Darcy exchanged anxious glances, their expressions mirroring the tension palpable in the air. The warriors 3 and Sif rode in the truck bed, the wind whipping around them as they kept their eyes glued to the breathtaking spectacle of the battle between Atomic and the formidable destroyer in the distance. "Didn't you try to do this already?" Eric asked as he held on to dear life as Jane drove the truck at breakneck speeds. "I have. But I will not fail this time," Thor said, his voice heavy and his expression serious as he watched another golden beam cut through the sky. He noticed that the large red constructs made by Atomic were growing smaller and smaller. "For everyone's sakes, I can't afford to." "But what's changed, my friend? Mjolnir won't suddenly find you worthy just because the situation has grown dire," Fandral said as he peered in through the back window of the truck. "I'm unsure if I am worthy. I very well may not be. Yet, in this very moment, a valiant warrior of Midgard doth engage in a struggle not of his own making. It is my responsibility to protect the people from my brother's wrath, not the warrior in red and white. Defeating the destroyer is my responsibility. And if I fail to lift Mjolnir, then I will still face it in battle as I am," Thor said, his voice unwavering. A blanket of silence filled the truck. The only noise that could be heard was the roaring tires and desert sand as Jane sped through the desert. "You can do it," Jane's voice cut through the silence. "I'm still not too sure what's going on, but what I do know is that Atomic needs your help. That thing is too strong, and he can't keep fighting forever. So trust me, you will be able to lift Mjolnir." "It's Mjolnir," Darcy whispered. "I learned how to say it." Oh. Gasping in disbelief, Atomic's eyes widened as he turned to witness the destroyer launch itself into the air with astonishing velocity. With a fluid motion that belied its massive frame, the formidable automaton seized Atomic by his cape, effortlessly spinning its upper section like a chaotic whirlwind. Atomic's breath caught in his throat as he was flung through the sky, the world blurring around him. Gritting his teeth, he extended his arms outward, summoning all his concentration to manipulate the density of the air encasing him. The surrounding atmosphere thickened in response, creating a cushion that gradually slowed him down. "I can understand why Edna said no capes now," Atomic said as the destroyer landed on the ground with a thunderous crash of rock and dirt. "There's just no stopping this thing." With a thunderous leap, the towering figure of the destroyer lunged toward Atomic, its massive frame momentarily blocking out the light. Atomic narrowly evaded the grasping hands, darting to the side with unmatched agility. In a fluid motion, the destroyer spun midair, its arm rising ominously as it unleashed a radiant beam of energy from its hand that sliced through the atmosphere with a brilliant intensity. Atomic's eyes widened in shock at the unexpected assault. In a desperate bid for survival, he conjured a series of thick crimson shields, positioning them before him, hoping they could withstand the onslaught long enough for him to dodge. But the beam, fueled by the immense power of the Odin force, pierced through the shields with ease and slammed into Atomic's shoulder. A guttural scream of pain erupted from Atomic as the force drove him into a spin, sending him hurtling toward the ground. As he plummeted, his instincts kicked in, he sent a surge of energy cascading toward the earth moments before impact. When his body collided with the ground, the landscape quaked as if made of gelatin, rippling violently beneath his weight. Gritting his teeth against the pain, Atomic swiftly willed the ground to regain its solidity. Pushing himself upright, Atomic grimaced as he surveyed the damage to his left shoulder. Once a gleaming protective layer, his armor lay in ruins, and smoldering remnants of his suit clung to charred flesh. He was fortunate, the remnants of his armor had absorbed enough of the blow to prevent a catastrophic injury that might have shattered his shoulder and severed his arm. Gah! Atomic hissed as he tried to lift his left arm, only to feel a wave of burning pain as he moved. "At least I can still move it." A cloud of dirt cascaded over Atomic as a powerful tremor jolted through the ground, sending him tumbling backward. Wincing against the pain that shot through his body, he struggled to push himself upright. Suddenly, he felt a vice-like grip on his chest as the destroyer shot out of the dust cloud to grab him. Panic surged through Atomic like a bolt of lightning striking a tree. In a desperate attempt to free himself, Atomic instinctively reached out to pry the destroyer's arm away. Instead, he unintentionally scanned the automaton, his mind racing as it began to analyze the unstoppable enemy before him. As he delved into the molecular structure of the armor, a gasp escaped his lips. The armor that enveloped the destroyer was unlike anything he had ever encountered, a mesmerizing alloy of otherworldly design, its complexity surpassed only by the chaotic beauty of the atoms that streamed in fluid motion across its surface. What were these shimmering currents cascading through the metal? They pulsed with an energy that defied comprehension. In that moment of chaotic revelation, he realized that this was no ordinary metal, it was infused with something much deeper, magic. Not just any magic, but the kind woven by the Allfather himself, Odin, ruler of Asgard. The very essence of the cosmos seemed to dance within those flowing streams, a formidable blend of myth and science that left Atomic awestruck. Atomic had encountered these same strings of mysterious matter before. But they were always unrecognizable to him. At least until now. It was clear to him that those dancing strings of matter had been magic all along. Overwhelmed by the deluge of information pouring into his mind, he felt like he was spiraling into a chasm of knowledge that threatened to consume even him. He severed the connection with sheer willpower, tearing himself away from the sublime understanding he had glimpsed. To Atomic, the entire experience felt as though it lasted an eternity, a profound journey through the unknown. In truth, however, only 2 fleeting seconds had passed. Unaware of the fate that had just befallen the young hero, the towering form of the destroyer prepared to crush the fragile human in its iron grasp. Thunder roared across the sky, a deafening crack splitting the air. Just as the automaton pivoted, a speeding hammer, shimmering with divine energy, struck its side with a colossal impact. The force compelled the destroyer to release Atomic, sending the hero tumbling into the rubble. Mjolnir paused in midair, suspended momentarily as if time itself held its breath, before it spun gracefully back to Thor's outstretched hand. Now clad in his resplendent Asgardian armor, silver and gold glinting beneath the stormy sky, Thor raced to Atomic's side, concern etched across his chiseled features. "Can you stand?" Thor queried, his voice a blend of authority and caring. "Why, yeah. Just catching my breath," Atomic replied, wincing as Thor assisted him to his feet. The god's piercing gaze fell upon the gruesome injury marring Atomic's shoulder, bloody and raw. "You've done enough to make your ancestors proud, warrior in red. You can leave the rest to me," Thor declared, his voice steady as he turned toward the resurgent destroyer. The automaton had regained its composure and advanced ominously, its face shield glowing ominously with a malevolent energy. "Yeah. I can't do that," Atomic replied, determination flaring in his eyes as he pressed recently created thick gauze and bandages against his wound. He hissed in pain but steeled himself, refusing to yield. "I'm not one to stand back and let someone else finish my battles. If I'm going to continue this fight, I need to upgrade my gear." Atomic thought, a fire igniting within him. "Let's fight fire with fire." Drawing a deep, centering breath, Atomic closed his eyes, a swirl of crimson light enveloping him as he channeled his inner strength. When the light dissipated, his previous red and white costume had transformed into a striking sleek suit of armor, a combination of glimmering black, vibrant white, and striking red accents that seemed to pulse with energy. Gone was the simple cloth cape, in its place flowed a magnificent cape of fiery, red energy that danced and flickered like flames caught in a tempest. Atomic's new suit was forged from the very same indomitable metal that constituted the destroyer's formidable form, which he was now calling mystic metal, with compact mesh threads of adamantium woven beneath the surface for added protection. Yet, he knew the armor lacked the magical enhancements that empowered the automaton's own formidable exterior. "Let's do this," Atomic asserted, activating his formidable Kaioken, a surge of power radiating from within. Thor, witnessing Atomic's unwavering spirit and the surge of strength coursing through his veins, grinned with fierce approval. "Very well, my friend. Follow my lead." Thor charged forward with a powerful spin of his hammer, unleashing a warrior's battle cry that echoed through the mountains. In an explosive burst of speed, Atomic matched Thor's velocity. Thor, wielding his enchanted hammer Mjolnir, swung with the fury of a raging storm. Meanwhile, Atomic, steady and resolute, unleashed his devastating Star Rage technique, a punch that carried the weight of 1,000 tons. Their combined forces collided with the destroyer, driving it with immense power against the rocky face of a mountain. Chapter 50, To Fight Beside a God. A bone-rattling crack echoed through the desert landscape as the armored form of the destroyer burst forth, shattering the side of a mountain sculpted from dirt and stone. Clouds of dust and debris billowed into the air, casting a haze over the sun-bleached terrain. As the dust began to settle, Thor and Atomic exchanged determined glances before propelling themselves into the fray. With arcs of blinding lightning dancing along the shaft of Mjolnir, Thor's voice resonated like thunder as he unleashed a primal roar. He swung his enchanted hammer down with immense force, summoning a cataclysmic bolt from the roiling dark clouds overhead. The destroyer, sensing the imminent attack, prepared to evade the strike. But before it could leap away, a heavy set of chains, crafted from the very same indestructible metal that made up its body, snaked around it, restraining its movements. The impact of the lightning strike was monumental, sending a shockwave rippling through the air as the bolt drove the destroyer deep into the earth, creating a massive crater. Even before the dust settled, Atomic soared skyward, his silhouette framed against the brilliant blue sky. With tremendous concentration, he raised his hands and summoned the ambient air around him, manipulating it until it crystallized into a massive, solid block. With a fierce grunt, he released the colossal 50-meter block, watching it crash onto the downed destroyer. In a swift motion, Atomic swiped his hands across the air, condensing the massive structure into a tight, spherical prison that encased the automaton, locking it away in an unyielding embrace of compressed, solidified air stronger than steel. Landing on the ground with his hand clenched tightly to hold the sphere, Atomic turned to Thor. "Do you think that will hold it?" The sphere of highly condensed air shattered into pieces, freeing the destroyer. Its face shield collapsed, and it began to build up power. "No," Thor replied as they moved away, just in time for a beam of energy to slice the desert floor in two. "Any ideas on how to beat it?" Can we even defeat it? Atomic wondered as he held out his hand beside him, forming a tightly condensed ball of plasma. He threw it at the destroyer's back with a heave, knocking it off balance. The destroyer is one of the most formidable weapons in existence. My father created it to defend his treasures and the people of Asgard, Thor shouted as he threw his hammer at the destroyer. The creature weaved aside and rushed at Thor, its primary target. The ground beneath the automaton gave way to thick mud, burying the destroyer within it. The mud was then transmuted into a large chunk of adamantium, trapping the suit of armor within it. But within seconds, the adamantium began to shake and glow red with intense heat. I would have used mystic metal, but creating those chains really drained the hell out of me. I can't afford to waste energy in this fight. Atomic thought. So there's nothing we can do? Atomic asked in frustration as he and Thor watched a large armored hand break free from the block of adamantium. No, there may be a way. But I need you to buy me some time, Thor said as he caught his returning hammer and looked up at the sky. Time. That's something I'm running out of myself, but yeah, I can buy you some time, Atomic replied as the destroyer finally broke free with a resounding crack. Excellent. I won't be long. Thor exclaimed, launching himself into the quickly darkening sky. Atomic turned back to the destroyer and rolled his shoulders. The automaton shook as if agitated, and a bright glow began to seep from its body. That can't be good. The destroyer unleashed beams of power from its face, arms, and chest, all directed at Atomic. With a burst, Atomic began to fly low in the air, but the multiple beams of energy turned to chase him. Wonderful, Atomic thought and began to weave in and out through the air as the beams tried to take him out of the sky. It was then that Atomic looked over to the destroyer and flew directly right at it. You're strong. But you're not very smart. Atomic thought. At the last possible second, Atomic turned sharply as the destroyer's own beams collided with its body. The automaton was launched back as its chest armor crumbled under its own attack, leaving visible burns and cracks on its form. Get back, my friend. Thor bellowed, his voice barely audible over the cacophony as an immense tornado spiraled down from the heavens. Winds howled at a staggering 500 miles per hour, whipping the landscape into a frenzy. The tornado loomed ominously, its colossal form crackling with vibrant arcs of lightning that danced ferociously around its perimeter, pulling everything within reach into its insatiable maw. Atomic grunted, feeling the fierce pull of the tempest as it clawed at him, desperate to drag him into its chaotic embrace. Determinedly, he anchored himself securely, driving steel chains deep into the ground, their metallic links glistening under the eerie light. Through the maelstrom, he watched in awe as the destroyer was lifted effortlessly off the ground. Its heavy, armored figure twisted and writhed in the storm's grasp, drawn toward the god of thunder, who swung Mjolnir above his head with a speed so great it became a mere blur. Suddenly, the destroyer retaliated, unleashing a searing energy beam toward Thor. Lightning fast, Thor parried each attack with his trusty hammer, deflecting the destructive blasts with a mastery born of countless battles. With a mighty thrust, he launched himself downward at the destroyer, Mjolnir held firmly in front of him, a bulwark against the wrath of his foe. In an act of defiance, the automaton fired its most formidable beam yet, a brilliant shaft of energy that collided with the hammer. The impact was tremendous, momentarily stalling Thor's advance as he grunted against the pressure. But from below the swirling chaos, Atomic sprang forward, harnessing the last reserves of his strength. With a fierce battle cry, he grabbed the sides of the destroyer's head. In a determined effort, he encased the automaton's head in a massive, dense cube of mystic metal. Go! Atomic yelled as he continued to reshape the metal cube, as the destroyer tried to melt through it. Thor nodded with determination, his muscles taut as he surged forward. At the last possible moment, Atomic released his grip and undid the mystic metal around the destroyer's head, allowing it to unleash a surge of power just as Thor brought Mjolnir crashing down onto the creature's formidable facial mask. The destroyer, undeterred by the hammer lodged in its facial mask, unleashed a torrent of energy in a desperate attempt to blow Thor away. Due to its reckless attack, an overwhelming blast erupted from within its core due to Thor's hammer stopping any energy from escaping. Waves of powerful shock waves rippled outward and dispersed the swirling tornado with arcs of high-powered winds. Caught in the violent maelstrom, Atomic was thrown backward by the ferocious onslaught, his body jolted as if it were a mere feather in a tempest. He grunted, straining against the force that tossed him through the air, his instincts racing to adapt. Drawing upon the last remnants of his Kyoken energy, he transformed the arid desert floor into a shimmering expanse of water, conjuring a vast lake beneath him. Atomic's form collided with the water's surface with a thunderous crash, creating a colossal splash that sent droplets soaring into the air like shimmering diamonds in the sunlight. Oh, oh, oh. Quick. Get him, a healing chamber. This armor, the destroyer. His body, extraordinary. Wyatt opened his eyes and saw gold. Where am I? Wyatt murmured, a sense of disorientation washing over him as he scanned his unfamiliar surroundings. He found himself encased in a sleek, high-tech pod that pulsed gently with a vibrant energy. As he focused his gaze on the air around him, he noticed tiny atoms swirling like motes of light, glowing and dancing as they zigzagged through the atmosphere before merging seamlessly with his skin. A realization struck him. I'm being healed. Wyatt muttered. He cautiously placed a hand on the plush, almost cloud-like bed beneath him, feeling an unusual warmth radiating from its surface. Distracted yet curious, Wyatt began to examine the intricate components of the pod that enveloped him. Metallic panels glimmered under the soft glow of the pod's internal lights, interconnected by a web of shimmering circuits that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. He recognized some devices as familiar, monitors displaying biometric information and glowing interfaces. Yet, other elements remained a mystery, strange glyphs flickering intermittently and odd contraptions humming with latent power. A sense of awe washed over him as he pieced together what he could. This chamber was not merely a healing device, it harnessed a form of magic and technology that accelerated his recovery in ways he couldn't begin to comprehend. Wyatt felt the energy coursing through him, soothing and invigorating, and he couldn't help but wonder how he had come to be here and what extraordinary forces were at work to restore him. Was I sent to another world, again? Wyatt muttered and checked his burnt left shoulder, which was an easy task considering he lacked a shirt. At least he had pants. No burn, not even a scar. Of course not, my friend. You are being healed by one of Asgard's healing chambers, Thor said as he stepped into the large room with a small, almost sad smile. After we defeated the destroyer, you fell unconscious. But the blast and fall had left you severely injured. I made the choice to bring you to Asgard. Now that he was no longer in a life and death battle with the destroyer, Wyatt took the moment to briefly be in awe of seeing Thor in person. Even though Wyatt was a superhero of great renown himself at this point, he still couldn't help but be excited. But what overshadowed his excitement at seeing the real Thor was the fact that he was now in Asgard. Asgard. As in the Asgard. Wyatt thought wide-eyed as Thor undid the healing chamber's glass cover. Wyatt sat up and stood on his feet. He looked around the room in awe. Bright, elegant carvings and architecture lined the room, as highly advanced technology lined the walls, and more healing chambers sat around him. This is Asgard. It's amazing, Wyatt muttered as he continued to look around in awe. But this is just a small fraction of what my home has to offer. I am Thor, son of Odin and Frigga, and the god of thunder, Thor said as he held out his hand. Snapping out of his reverie, Wyatt turned to Thor. It's an honor to meet you, Thor. I'm Wyatt Wilkins. The honor is mine, Wilkins. It was a pleasure to fight alongside such a mighty young warrior like yourself. Follow me, and we'll find you something to wear and something to eat, Thor said as he led Wyatt through the tall, exquisite halls of the building. Don't worry about the clothes, Wyatt replied as he conjured a new set of attire for himself. Impressive. I witnessed your abilities during our battle. How do they work? Thor inquired as they entered a large room filled with people dressed in complex but traditional clothing. The crowd turned to Thor and offered him a quick, respectful nod. Wyatt smiled and returned the greeting to a few Asgardians. Well, you see, my abilities work like this. Wyatt began to explain how his powers functioned. Thor nodded and asked about the suit Wyatt wore when he arrived at Puente Antiguo. Wyatt explained that it was part of his identity as Atomic, the alter ego he took on to keep his identity hidden on Earth. From there, Thor asked several questions regarding Wyatt's role as Atomic. I understand now. You are one of Midgard's champions, a truly mighty one. Few could have confronted such a foe as the Destroyer and lived to tell the tale. You have earned my respect, Wilkins, for saving my life and aiding me in protecting the town from its rampage, Thor said as they stepped outside. Now, allow me to give you a proper introduction to my home. Wyatt stood on the edge of the expansive terrace, blinking in awe as he took in the ethereal beauty of Asgard. The landscape stretched before him like a vivid dream, a realm of breathtaking vistas that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. Asgard was a unique anomaly among the 9 realms, a place that transcended conventional understanding. It was neither a planet nor a moon, suspended in the cosmos without any discernible rotational axis or star to orbit. Instead, it floated majestically, a celestial tapestry woven from vibrant colors and illuminated by an impossible light. The architecture of this magnificent floating landmass was as intricate as it was stunning. Towering spires and grand towers seemed to rise organically from the earth, as if shaped by the hands of nature itself. Each structure was a testament to artistry and power, adorned with glistening gold that caught the light in dazzling reflections, making it appear like they radiated a warm, inviting glow. Wyatt marveled at how the buildings seamlessly blended with the infinite seas that spilled over the edges of the realm, creating a surreal vista that captivated his senses and stirred his imagination. I don't have the words, Wyatt murmured, etching the landscape into his memory. I'm glad to hear that, Thor replied, a bittersweet smile crossing his face. In yesterday's battle, I destroyed the Rainbow Bridge to save Jotunheim from destruction. Without it, we cannot send you back to Midgard. Oh, Wyatt said quietly, quickly recalling the events of the first Thor movie. It was as Thor said, the god of thunder had to destroy the Bifrost to stop Loki's plans to annihilate an entire realm, leaving Wyatt trapped in Asgard. That's not good, Wyatt muttered, now deflated. Chapter 51, A King's Gift. The grand feasting halls of Asgard buzzed with life, their high wooden beams echoing with vibrant laughter and the clamor of clinking goblets. Enormous tables overflowed with lavish platters, showcasing an impressive array of succulent meats, fresh fruits, and delectable pastries, all accompanied by copious amounts of frothy, rich ale that filled the air with the scent of indulgence. You should have witnessed it firsthand. The destroyer was no match for Thor and Wilkins as they unleashed their fury upon it. Volstagg bellowed, his voice booming like thunder as he brandished a large, ornate pint of Asgardian mead. His words ignited a chorus of cheers and gleeful roars from the assembled Asgardian warriors, their spirits soaring alongside the vaulted ceiling. Seated along the long dining tables of the hall, Volstagg, Hogun, Fandral, and Sif, legendary warriors of Asgard, had just regaled the gathered crowd with the tale of Thor and Wyatt's epic clash against the unstoppable destroyer down on Earth, referred to as Midgard among the Asgardians. As the warriors wove the narrative of the battle, embellishing it with larger-than-life details that helped all those who listened to picture the imagery of valor and heroism that both Thor and Wyatt exuded during the battle. Wyatt, however, found himself bemused by the exaggerated retelling, recognizing how their skilled storytelling transformed a fierce confrontation into a grand epic worthy of the Eddas. Despite his youth, Wilkins is a formidable warrior, deserving of the title champion of Midgard, Thor declared, his voice ringing with pride as he lifted his own pint high above the crowd. Another thunderous applause erupted, reverberating through the walls and shaking the very foundations of the hall as everyone raised their drinks in jubilant unison. Amidst the revelry, Wyatt sat next to Thor, a pint of mead in hand, feeling the warmth of the atmosphere seep into his bones. In his other life, the life of the older Wyatt, he had often indulged in drinking at college fraternity parties, which often then not left him with some of the worst hangovers and regrets. As such, he was no stranger to drinking large amounts among large crowds. But unlike his old college parties, the crowd around him drank and celebrated on a completely different level, steeped in ancient traditions and camaraderie. Despite that, Wyatt embraced the moment and enjoyed himself alongside everyone, momentarily letting go of his worries about being stranded in Asgard. "Tell me, Wilkins," Sif said, her curious gaze settling on him as she took a measured sip of her ale, "how many battles have you partaken in? Surely a warrior of your caliber must have witnessed countless conflicts." Wyatt chuckled, a hint of modesty creeping into his voice. "Well, I've only been acting as a comic for about a year or so. I've faced off against my share of criminals, but I've really only had 2 other true life and death struggles prior to the encounter with the destroyer," he replied, taking a hefty bite of the hearty meat that filled his plate. His admission brought a stillness to the hall, the gravity of his words weighing heavily for a brief moment before the atmosphere erupted in boisterous celebration once more, almost causing Wyatt to choke on his food. "Incredible. You were born for this," someone shouted, their voice piercing through the joy. "Ha ha. A true warrior indeed. You must come from a long lineage of champions," another exclaimed, their laughter ringing like bells as compliments surged around Wyatt, enveloping him in a wave of appreciation. Not accustomed to such loud and numerous praise directed towards him, especially without his superhero persona, Wyatt felt a flush of bashfulness rise in his cheeks. The warriors of Asgard, whose battle scars and storied pasts echoed through the hall, were now looking toward him with admiration, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie and warmth that made his heart swell with pride. It was certainly a unique environment he found himself in. Wyatt turned his gaze towards Thor as the god expressed his gratitude to those who showered him with praise. The god of thunder tried to muster a festive spirit to match his friend's exuberance, but the effort seemed to falter. Wyatt couldn't entirely blame him, only recently had Thor, to his knowledge, lost his brother Loki to the vastness of space, and to add to that sorrow, he had inadvertently destroyed the Bifrost, the only means of returning to Jane Foster. Wyatt was jolted back to the lively atmosphere as Volstagg, ever the boisterous companion, threw an arm around his shoulder with a hearty laugh that resonated through the feasting hall. "Ha ha. Tell me, young Wilkins, have you set your sights on any women who strike your fancy here? Asgard boasts some of the most beautiful women you will ever lay eyes on." Volstagg exclaimed, gesturing towards a nearby table where a cluster of young women giggled, their eyes glittering as they stole glances in Wyatt's direction. Word of Wyatt's bravery and strength had traveled fast through Asgard, and despite the realm's advanced civilization, its people clung dearly to traditional Viking-like values. In this context, Wyatt had unwittingly become a coveted target for many of the young women present, enchanted by both his accomplishments and charm. "Well, they're certainly beautiful," he replied, a charming smile breaking across his face as he felt the infectious energy of the crowd sweep him along. The sweet, warming effects of the pint of mead in his hand only added to his buoyant mood. His comment elicited a roar of approval, followed by a chorus of delighted giggles from the table of young women, each of them blushing under his gaze, a moment that seemed to brighten not only their faces but the entire hall. As the festivities unfolded around him, Wyatt allowed the worries and stress he had accumulated over the several months melt away. Laughter filled the air, music echoed against the stone walls, and with the night full of merriment, Wyatt embraced the joyous celebration, letting the vibrant atmosphere sweep him into its embrace. Oh, oh, oh. Wyatt floated high above the golden structures of Asgard, the vast night sky stretching endlessly above him, dotted with shimmering stars that seemed to sing the ancient tales of this mythical realm. After the lively celebrations in the feasting hall had drawn to a close, he had slipped away, wanting to escape the throngs of eager admirers who sought his attention. Once outside, spreading his arms wide, Wyatt took flight, savoring the exhilaration of solitude among the tranquil skies of Asgard. The cool, refreshing air enveloped his exposed skin, crisp and invigorating, free from any hint of pollution or impurities, a stark contrast to the bustling chaos of New York City. I could get used to this view, Wyatt mused, his eyes scanning the beautifully crafted streets below, illuminated by the soft glow of enchanted lights. In sharp contrast to his home city's frenetic and unpredictable streets, Asgard operated with an elegance that felt like poetry in motion. The city thrummed in harmony, where peace reigned and crime was virtually non-existent. There were no dark alleys or desperate corners, every citizen had what they needed in this grand utopia, a vivid tapestry of thriving communities and vibrant cultures. Yet, a pang of longing pierced through the beauty surrounding him. Still. It isn't home, Wyatt murmured wistfully as he turned his gaze toward the towering royal palace, where he had been graciously invited to stay by Thor himself. As he descended and landed softly on the terrace of his lavish quarters, Wyatt stumbled slightly, the remnants of the evening's drink swirling in his head. Catching his balance, he stepped inside the opulent room, taking in the rich fabrics and intricate designs that adorned his temporary abode. The sheer size of it was staggering, almost overwhelming, yet inviting at the same time. After a moment of admiration, he made his way into the adjoining bathroom, eager for a warm shower to wash away the remnants of the festivities. As the water cascaded over him, it felt as though the weight of the evening's indulgence melted away, leaving only a sense of clarity and calm. Once refreshed, Wyatt emerged to find an array of traditional Asgardian garments laid out on the bed, each piece meticulously crafted, adorned with intricate patterns that spoke of the realm's culture and heritage. After giving them a cursory glance, Wyatt decided to leave them for later, instead opting to lie down on the plush bedding. The softness enveloped him, and as he settled in, he couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between this enchanted realm and the life he had left behind. "This bed is heavenly," Wyatt muttered as he sank into the soft, cloud-like mattress below him. "That's it. I'm going to skin everything." A brief knock at the door interrupted his daydream about building his own palace back on Earth. After creating a robe and a pair of pajamas, Wyatt walked to the door and opened it to reveal Thor. "Wilkins, I hope the room is to your liking," Thor said. "It's great," Wyatt replied with a grateful smile. "Excellent. I've spoken to my father about your deeds back in Midgard. For your actions in preventing the destroyer from striking me while I was mortal and helping me defeat it, he will grant you any reward you choose. He is also finding a way for you to return home as we speak," Thor added with a small, bittersweet smile. "That's great. You know, Thor. I'm sure you'll find a way back to Jane soon. And when I return, I'll tell her why you haven't come back to see her. That way, she won't think you abandoned her," Wyatt said. "I appreciate that, my friend. Now, let me leave you to your rest." "We have much to do tomorrow," Thor said, and the two exchanged goodbyes for the night. Closing the door, Wyatt threw off his robe and landed face first on the bed. It didn't take long for him to drift off to sleep on the blissful cloud. Oh, oh, oh. "Stand, Wyatt Wilkins. Today, you have brought honor to yourself and to your ancestors," boomed the king of Asgard, Odin the Allfather, from his majestic throne. Beside him, his wife, Frigga, looked on with a thankful smile. "Because of your valor in saving my son's life and your pivotal role in vanquishing the mighty destroyer, I, Odin, king of Asgard, shall reward you with anything within my realm of power. Speak now, brave one." Wyatt rose from his bow, gazing up at Odin with awe and humility. The aura of power emanating from the king was palpable. He was no mere mortal but a god among gods, one of the mightiest beings to ever exist. "Thank you for your kind words, your majesty," Wyatt replied, striving to maintain a tone of utmost respect. "However, I seek no reward for my actions. It was simply my duty to do what was right." His voice held steady, and he hoped he would not offend the king or those gathered there by sounding too casual. The nobles and warriors present exchanged glances of admiration, recognizing a rare quality in the young mortal. No longer merely a warrior of strength and skill, it was clear now that Wyatt also embodied principles of justice and righteousness, an ideal that should resonate with all in Asgard. Thor smiled broadly, while Sif and the warriors three nodded approvingly, their respect for Wyatt deepening as he humbly turned down what many might consider the chance of a lifetime. A reward from the king of Asgard was no trivial matter. The king could bestow riches or powers unimaginable. Yet Wyatt stood firm, a mortal among titans, rejecting such an offer. Odin's countenance remained firm throughout Wyatt's words, but as he spoke, a flicker of warmth crossed the king's features. I see, you are indeed a warrior of exceptional courage and honor. Still, as king, I cannot let such greatness go unrewarded. Thus, I insist, Wyatt Wilkins, I grant you one of my treasures, the gift of mystic eyes. With these eyes, you shall perceive and comprehend the very fabric of magic itself. I believe they will complement your already formidable skills. As Odin proclaimed this, he raised his spear, Gungnir, and struck it against the ground, unleashing a brilliant golden light that filled the throne room. Wyatt gasped as an explosion of energy swelled within him and vibrant colors flooded his vision, overwhelming his senses like a kaleidoscope coming to life. He staggered forward, pressing his palms against the sides of his head as a searing pulse of pain radiated through his skull, only to subside as quickly as it had appeared. When he finally opened his eyes, a startling transformation had taken place. His green irises now bore 2 golden rings, shimmering and spinning slowly within his pupils before dissipating away. Astounded, Wyatt felt his perception shift, a new dimension unfolded before him, revealing an intricate web of the magic woven throughout the room. A sight he was already aware of before, but he could never truly understand. But now, it was also clear to him. This is magic, Wyatt whispered, his voice barely above a breath. He followed the swirling lines of colorful energy that danced before his eyes, the once confounding tapestry of existence now laid bare to his understanding. Previously, when he gazed upon the vibrant, flowing lines of dancing atoms that comprised the magic coursing through Asgard, he had felt lost and bewildered, unable to grasp their intricate makeup or manipulate their delicate forms. Ever since he gained his powers, Wyatt's connection to all of the fundamental essences of the universe had always felt incomplete, rendering him incapable of touching or reshaping these ethereal threads that were always in sight but unreachable. But now, clarity surged through him. The mysteries of the vibrant, living atoms unfolded before his mind's eye like a masterfully drawn map. Each line was a complex structure, alive and responsive, capable of shifting and changing to adapt to the needs of the world around them. As he turned his gaze downward, his newfound perception pierced through solid material layers, revealing their molecular composition's hidden intricacies. To his astonishment, the deep layers below the throne room pulsed with expertly casted magic, a vibrant reservoir that thrummed in harmony with the very essence of the castle itself. Wyatt could hardly believe it. He realized that this grand structure, every stone and beam, was an intricate creation born of magic, a testament to the boundless power surrounding him. It's beautiful, is it not? Odin asked, a knowing smile on his and Frigga's faces as they watched Wyatt look around with a look of wonder similar to that of a child discovering a new playground. It is, Wyatt nodded and bowed before Odin. Thank you, Allfather. Truly. Think nothing of it, Odin replied. I recommend you take some time to understand your new gift while I find a way to return you to Midgard. Although the Bifrost is destroyed, there are many ways to travel between the realms. Wyatt nodded and bowed once more. With his business concluded with the king of Asgard, he was excused from the room. As Wyatt left the palace, he took the opportunity to further explore Asgard. He allowed his new senses to guide him as he sought to gain a deeper understanding of the new world that was now open to him. Chapter 52, the Maximoff twins meet. Anne, thanks for the power stones, here's your bonus chapter. The world-renowned hero, Atomic, remains missing since his deadly confrontation with the mysterious colossal suit of armor that appeared out of nowhere in New Mexico, Christine Everhart reported, her voice steady as the news station began to play grainy and fragmented video clips of Atomic engaging in a fierce battle against the gargantuan destroyer. Stark Industries CEO, Pepper Potts has come out and made a public announcement, stating that the mysterious suit of armor that battled Atomic has no ties or connections with Tony Stark, eliminating the possibility that it could have been a new out-of-control Iron Man armor. On the scene of the battle, eyewitness accounts from the residents of Puente Antiguo suggest that Atomic was mysteriously swept away into a dazzling rainbow portal that descended from the heavens after he and a mysterious figure wielding a hammer successfully vanquished the menacing suit of armor that had been wreaking havoc across the town. From our WHH studio, we now turn to Anya Corazon, live in Puerto Antiguo. Anya. Christine transitioned, and the screen shifted to reveal a young woman with cascading brown hair standing amidst the reconstruction efforts in the resilient town of Puerto Antiguo. Thank you, Christine. As you can see behind me, the quaint town of Puerto Antiguo is still grappling with the aftermath of the devastating destruction wrought by that mysterious suit of armor. The devastation could have been exponentially worse had it not been for the timely intervention of Atomic, Anya stated earnestly into her microphone, as the camera panned to capture the hard-working construction crews working diligently to restore the town to its former glory. In the following sequence, several amateur video recordings flashed across the screen, showcasing an adrenaline-pumping showdown between Atomic, Thor, and the destroyer in the far-off arid desert landscape. The footage intensified, revealing a fierce tornado spiraling down as Atomic was violently hurled through the air. Just before his body could collide with the unforgiving ground, an awe-inspiring burst of energy swept the ground, transforming a vast stretch of the desert into a shimmering lake, into which Atomic plunged. As you can see from these hand-captured videos from the residents, the mysterious men who fought alongside Atomic leapt into the lake and bravely pulling New York's hero back to safety on the shore. Shortly thereafter, a group of unique individuals clad in similar armor to the hammer-wielding men emerged. Now this would be odd enough, if not for the incredible appearance of a radiant beam of rainbow light that magically teleported them all away. Including Atomic. Yes, you heard me right, a rainbow beam. It's hard to believe, and I wouldn't have either if we didn't have these astonishing videos to substantiate it, Anya explained as a clip played, depicting a magnificent, multicolored beam striking the desert floor where Atomic and the armored figures stood. When the luminous beam faded away, all traces of them had seemingly vanished, leaving behind a large intricate markings on the ground where they once stood. While I suspect these mysterious figures aided Atomic, the lingering question remains, where is he now? Anya said, a concerned expression on her face. Oh. As the news feed suddenly cut off, a deep sense of disappointment fell over those gathered in the communal area of the X-Mansion, their hopes for further details on the event dimmed crashing down. Hey. I was watching that, Kurt said, glancing back to find Wanda glaring at him, her fingers clutching the television remote. A hint of nervousness crossed in his eyes before he quickly added, you know what, I think I have some chores to do. See ya. In an instant, enveloped by a puff of vibrant, swirling smoke, Kurt vanished from sight. Following Kurt's lead, several of the newer students exchanged wary glances and hastily made their exit, unwilling to stick around and provoke Wanda's evident annoyance. Everyone, that is, except Kitty. She remained stubbornly planted in her seat, a worried, now irritated frown etched deeply on her face, her arms resolutely crossed over her chest. Do you mind? I was watching that, Kitty snapped, her tone sharp with irritation. Wanda turned her gaze to Kitty and narrowed her eyes, her expression a mix of confusion and challenge. Okay. What's your damage? Offended, Kitty shot up from her chair, her stance defiant. My damage? What are you even talking about? I'm talking about that attitude you've got with me. Last I checked, I haven't done anything to you. Heck, I don't even know your name, Ponytail, Wanda replied coolly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. What? I introduced myself, like, on the very first day you got here. My name is Kitty. Kitty pried. Kitty's cheeks flushed as her irritation bubbled over, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Okay, settle down, Kit Kat, Wanda said with a mocking grin, raising her hands in mock surrender. So what did I do to you? Did I step on your shoes, or maybe I ate something that belonged to you? Because it definitely wasn't me who ate that slice of chocolate cake in the fridge. Kitty opened her mouth to retaliate, but instead ended up biting her tongue in frustration. She stormed out with a huff that filled the room with tension, leaving a perplexed Wanda in her wake. Shrugging her shoulders in casual dismissal, Wanda returned her focus to the television, her frown deepening as she wrestled with the sudden awkwardness that lingered in the air. Where did you end up, Wyatt? Wanda murmured as she pulled out her phone to see several unanswered text messages she sent to Wyatt. To distract herself, she decided to focus on her training. You'd better be here for Saturday's session. After quickly changing into her fitted training gear, Wanda stepped out into the expansive outdoor training area, the sun casting warm rays across the grass. She took a deep breath and extended her hands, summoning wisps of crimson energy that danced playfully around her fingertips. With a determined smile, she felt the familiar sensation of her power lifting her off the ground, and soon she was hovering just above the earth, a thrill coursing through her veins. Wanda reveled in the joy of sustained flight, and with a strong push, she glided gracefully across the training ground, the air rushing past her skin in a thrilling embrace. But suddenly, a fast rush of wind whipped below her, swirling all around and disrupting her concentration. Startled, she landed in a crouch, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the speeding blue and silver blur that darted past her like a streak of lightning. Just as she braced herself for a defensive move, the blur came to an abrupt halt, revealing none other than Pietro, a sly grin spreading across his face, his vibrant dirty silver hair tousled from the wind. You're Wanda, he exclaimed, a curious glint in his eye. Who are you? You're not a student here, Wanda retorted, her glowing hands still poised and ready, illuminating her features with an otherworldly light. Me? A student here? Not in a million years. Pietro replied, mock indignation etched on his face, before chuckling and adding, I'm Pietro. Pietro Maximoff. Your long-lost brother. Wanda blinked in astonishment, the words sinking in like stones in a pond, before she slowly lowered her hands, the glow fading. We should chat, don't you think, sis, he suggested, the playful smirk still lingering on his lips. Oh. Wanda slowly sipped her vibrant strawberry smoothie, observing Pietro with a mix of suspicion and disgust. He sat across from her, devouring 7 oversized orders of greasy burgers and crispy fries with reckless abandon. The other patrons in the bustling burger joint cast uneasy glances at him, their expressions a mix of horror and amusement. A few even hastily exited, unable to stomach the sight of his ravenous consumption. So, you're my brother. Wanda ventured cautiously, her voice laced with skepticism. You up? Pietro replied, his mouth stuffed to the brim with food, bits of lettuce and ketchup perilously close to spilling. Wanda grimaced. That's disgusting. Swallow your food first before speaking, she snapped, turning her gaze away in annoyance. Pietro chuckled, finally swallowing with a loud gulp. Sorry, I forgot my manners at home. But yeah, I'm your brother. You know, father, I mean. Magneto said not to come see you, but I just had to find out if my amazing good looks run in the family or if they're just a gift from the gods. Wanda stared at him, her expression flat. With a flick of her wrist, she discreetly flicked him in the forehead with her powers, sending a surge of energy that earned her a yelp of surprise and pain from her brother. Pietro clutched his forehead, looking bewildered. Ouch. What was that for? He exclaimed, rubbing the spot where she had struck him. I wanted to see if I could switch on your humble setting. Unfortunately, it seems to have failed miserably, she retorted, a hint of triumph in her tone. Why you? Listen, Wanda interrupted, her frustration bubbling to the surface. She slammed a hand on the table, causing the nearby condiments to rattle, and leaned in closer. I believe you when you say we're siblings, twins, even. My powers can confirm that much. But I don't understand what you want from me. Unless the deadbeat sent you here to convince me to join him, fat chance, by the way, so if that's what this is about, you might as well take a hike. For the first time, Pietro's boisterous facade faltered. His cockiness faded, replaced by a genuine look of melancholy. He stared down at his sixth half-eaten burger, his brow furrowing. No. That's not why I wanted to see you. I told you, Magneto told me to leave you alone. But I was curious about how you turned out. In that fleeting moment, Wanda saw a glimpse of sincerity in her brother's eyes, but his usual over-the-top personality quickly swallowed it. With a dramatic flourish, he tossed his hair aside. Honestly, I'm not impressed. He sprang to his feet, towering over her. Once you're done playing with the ex-losers, swing by the Brotherhood. We've got some big plans brewing for the future that you won't want to miss. In an instant, Pietro blurred into speed and vanished, leaving Wanda staring incredulously at the empty seat across from her. What the hell? Wait, he left me his bill, she growled, glaring at the towering mound of crumpled burger wrappers and empty fry cups that littered the table. That little bastard. Chapter 53, Farewell, Asgard. Over the past several days that Wyatt had spent in Asgard, he dedicated himself to training his mystic eyes. This unique ability, gifted to him by Odin, promised to unlock new dimensions of perception and understanding, enhancing Wyatt's already impressive capacity to perceive the world due to his powers. After the first 3 days, his training had finally begun to bear fruit. The once bewildering tapestry of magical intricacies that lived throughout the realm was now clear for Wyatt to understand. Asgard itself was a realm of vivid colors and hidden arcane symbols, each element revealing its secrets to him thanks to his new sight. He could now decipher the underlying principles of magic etched into the floors and buildings, the delicate interplay of will and energy casted eons ago, the precise gestures that shaped this reality, and the incantations that breathed life into spells. However, this newfound level of understanding wasn't enough when Wyatt attempted to try and cast spells of his own. Despite his magical understanding, the practical application of magic still eluded him, mainly because he had never been able to observe how seasoned magicians worked. Despite the incredible setting that was Asgard, it was vastly devoid of any public displays of magic. The only magical prowess he witnessed came from the illustrious Queen Frigga herself when she had used her magic in the grand gardens of the palace. Frigga was master spellcaster renowned for her wisdom and magical prowess. She commanded the elements with ease, yet Wyatt couldn't bring himself to approach her for guidance. He felt as if it would be seen as extremely rude asking the Queen for guidance considering that he was already being allowed to stay in the royal palace. Thus, he found himself at a loss for now, yearning to cast spells but hindered by a lack of practical experience. Thankfully, Thor had guided Wyatt to Asgard's incredible library where he found several tomes on magic. Tomes on which Wyatt studied for hours late at night along with any other book he could get his hands on regarding Asgard's culture and knowledge. For now, the ability to wield magic effectively still eluded Wyatt. At least until he could encounter a magician to learn under or watch. Despite this setback, his mystic eyes proved invaluable in other ways. With this new heightened vision, he could perceive the world at a new, astonishing level of detail. He found himself able to see the intricate movements of individuals during battle, analyzing their internal magical circuits, an elaborate network that every living being possessed. These circuits were the key to learning and practicing the mystic arts, allowing those with the right talent to harness their magical potential. However, as Wyatt had come to realize, possessing the capacity to learn something did not necessarily equate to having the inherent talent or ability to do so. As he immersed himself in training with his newfound mystic eyes during sparring sessions with the young warriors of Asgard, he discovered a remarkable ability to trace the movements of his sparring partners with uncanny precision. Each flicker of motion became crystal clear, as if time itself had slowed down around him. This heightened perception, combined with the lightning-fast processing power of his mind, allowed him to capture every subtle shift and nuance in their actions, creating an intricate picture of their movements. He couldn't help but draw vivid parallels to the legendary Sharingan, an iconic ocular power from one of his favorite anime series. This extraordinary ability enabled its users to foresee their opponent's moves, dissecting and analyzing every gesture with razor-sharp clarity. The thrill of wielding such power ignited a fire within him, propelling his training into uncharted realms of skill and mastery. Although Wyatt didn't see himself primarily as a hand-to-hand combatant, he truly appreciated how this new layer of foresight significantly enhanced his skills as a CQC fighter. This perceptive advantage was especially handy during his training sessions with Thor, Sif, and the Warriors 3. Each exchange during their spars was a whirlwind of skill, power, and agility. Yet, Wyatt found that he could anticipate their movements using his new sight, dodging and countering with newfound confidence despite the disparity in strength and speed between himself and the Asgardians. Still, there were times he would be too slow to react and be sent to the ground in a heap of pain. "You catch on quickly, Wilkins. But you need to move faster and swing harder," Hogan said as he swung his blunted sword against Wyatt's wooden and steel shield. Wyatt grunted as he absorbed the impact of the blow. "Yeah, easy for you to say. I don't have an Asgardian body," Wyatt yelled, weaving under another swing. Spinning on his heel, he slammed his own blunted sword into the warrior's stomach. Hogan grinned and deftly parried the blow. With expert movement, he disarmed Wyatt and kicked his feet out from under him. Wyatt groaned as he lay on the dirt floor of the training yard. That was uncalled for. Hogan chuckled and helped Wyatt to his feet. "Don't be discouraged, Wilkins. Your skills are growing stronger with each bout." Wyatt offered a tired smile and nodded. "I suppose, it does take you a lot more moves to knock me down to the floor." Although Wyatt possessed remarkable skills and formidable powers, he recognized the value of further honing his physical abilities, especially in Asgard's finest presence. The Warriors 3, Fandral, Hogan, and Volstagg, urged him to embrace the art of weaponry during his time in their legendary realm. Known for their prowess on the battlefield, they offered Wyatt invaluable training that he eagerly accepted. As Wyatt trained rigorously under the watchful eyes of the Warriors 3, Sif, and Thor, he experienced a rapid evolution in his combat skills. Every training session challenged him, pushing him to the very edge of his physical and mental limits. With unwavering resolve, he immersed himself in the teachings, absorbing every lesson with intense focus and discipline. He came to understand the Asgardians' profound mastery of hand-to-hand combat, their diverse weaponry, and their intricate tactical strategies. Through rigorous drills and sparring practices, he became adept at harnessing his physical strength while simultaneously learning the importance of strategy and finesse in battle. The strong bond he developed with his mentors, seasoned warriors themselves, opened his eyes to a new perspective on warfare. They taught him that true strength lies not only in brute force but also in the ability to outthink and outmaneuver an opponent. This blending of physical prowess with clever tactics reshaped his approach to conflict, turning him from a mere fighter into a strategic combatant. A defining moment arrived for Wyatt when he found himself face-to-face with 10 of Asgard's lesser-known warriors in an intense sparring match. The arena, filled with the echoes of clashing weapons and the energy of onlookers, set the stage for an actual test of his abilities. Drawing on everything he had learned during his rigorous training, he meticulously assessed each opponent, taking note of their movements and fighting styles. With a strategy in mind, he tapped into his newfound skills, an amalgamation of agility, cunning, and hard-won experience. In a breathtaking display of athleticism, Wyatt executed a series of fluid maneuvers, channeling his concentration to bring down half of his adversaries with precision and grace, all without relying on his unique matter-altering abilities. Though he ultimately found himself overpowered by the remaining challengers, this match marked a pivotal milestone in his journey. Wyatt's performance was no small feat. It demonstrated not just his physical prowess but also his growth in confidence and mastery. In a land renowned for its formidable beings, he had proven that even a mortal could rise to the occasion and challenge the extraordinary, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of those who witnessed his valiant efforts. "Worry not, Wilkins. You are still young, give yourself time to grow. In time, you shall be able to take me down just as fast," Hogan said and patted Wyatt's back to remove some dirt. "Now come, we have a party to get to." Wyatt smiled and nodded as the two walked out of the training yard. Tonight marked Wyatt's last night in Asgard. After several days of uncertainty and anticipation, Odin had finally devised a way to return Wyatt to Earth, an extraordinary method that didn't require the use of the Bifrost. To celebrate this momentous farewell, Thor, Sif, and the Warriors 3 had insisted on organizing a grand party, honoring their new friend and fellow warrior. As Wyatt and Hogan strolled through the bustling streets of Asgard, a vibrant tapestry of colors and sounds surrounded them. The air was filled with the tantalizing sense of spiced meats and baked goods from nearby stalls, while the laughter of children echoed in the distance. People paused their daily activities to greet the two warriors, their faces lighting up with recognition. Wyatt, despite not having to, had spent his free time helping anyone in need and engaging in friendly conversations whenever he could. Over the days, he had become a popular figure, and many in Asgard had come to cherish his presence. Wilkins. We'll see you tonight. Make sure to save a round for us, called out Berger, the local vegetable merchant, who beamed with gratitude. Just days prior, Wyatt had come to Berger's aid when one of the wheels on his wagon had broken off. Wyatt. I made some of my mother's flödebuller. I'll bring some tonight, shouted Hulda, a bright-eyed girl whose joy was infectious. She waved enthusiastically, her curls bouncing as she jumped up and down. Wyatt had spent an afternoon helping her care for her livestock. We're going to miss ya, young Wilkins. I'll be sure to drink a pint in your honor tonight. Hugliker, a robust young man he had assisted with building a fence for his farm, called from atop his horse. His hearty laughter and friendly spirit were hard to forget. As Wyatt made his way through the streets, more voices chimed in, each bidding him farewell with words of appreciation and sentimentality. He responded with kind smiles and heartfelt acknowledgments, his heart swelling with gratitude for the connections he had forged during his time in Asgard. For Wyatt, being able to use his powers openly and engage with the people he had helped was a liberating experience. Each friendly face in the crowd reminded him of the impact he had made, and he felt honored to be part of their lives, even if only for a fleeting moment. Yet, amidst the warmth and camaraderie, a bittersweet ache settled in his chest. He felt a tinge of sadness at the thought of leaving Asgard behind, a place that had welcomed him with open arms. However, deep down, Wyatt realized that he had to return to Earth. He had people, friends and loved ones, waiting for him and counting on him. Worry not, Wilkins. There will always be a place for you in Asgard. Hogan said as they stood in front of the palace. Twin guards stood tall behind them. Wyatt smiled and waved goodbye to the men as he walked off. He stood motionless, taking in the sights of the glowing city around him with a small smile. Oh. The celebration in honor of Wyatt's return to Earth was nothing short of spectacular, stretching on for hours in the opulent grand halls of Asgard's celebration halls. As was tradition in Asgardian festivities, an abundance of food, rich in flavors and textures, flowed alongside endless streams of hearty drinks. Laughter and music filled the air, creating an enchanting atmosphere that enveloped everyone in warmth. Wyatt found himself swept up in the jovial spirit of the night, whether it was through sharing drinks or dancing the night away. Each dance and toast released the months of tension Wyatt had been carrying, allowing him to fully embrace the joyful moment and forget his troubles as the hero, Atomic. After a while, seeking a moment of respite from the lively tumult, Wyatt stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. Clutching a goblet of ale, he wandered into the starlit night, where the beauty of Asgard's sky stretched out above him like a canvas sprinkled with shimmering stars. A soft smile graced his lips as he took a moment to appreciate the breathtaking view. The immense celestial beauty filled him with a bittersweet nostalgia, as he wondered how long it would be before he might return to this magical realm again. The cool breeze carried the distant sounds of revelry, but for a fleeting moment, he was alone with his thoughts. I wonder how everyone is doing back home. Wyatt thought. What's on your mind, Wilkins? Thor asked as he walked up beside Wyatt, Mjolnir resting at his hip. Oh, I guess I'm just eager to go back home. Not that I haven't enjoyed my time here, Asgard is great. Amazing, really, Wyatt replied. But I miss my friends. The longer I'm away, the more I worry about how they're all doing. Yes. You carry the weight of responsibility on your shoulders. That's a commendable quality for someone as young as you, Thor said, reminiscing about his own responsibilities and duties. Worry not, my friend. By this time tomorrow, you shall be back home. Wyatt nodded, and the two watched as a shooting star streaked across the sky. This may sound odd, but do you mind if I scan Mjolnir? Thor raised an eyebrow but lifted Mjolnir nonetheless. I must give you a word of warning, my father instilled an enchantment that only allows the worthy to lift Mjolnir. Oh no, I don't want to lift it, I doubt I can. I just want to scan it, if you don't mind, Wyatt said, rubbing the back of his head. I see, you're referring to your ability to copy anything you touch. Very well then, Thor replied, holding out Mjolnir. Thank you, Thor, Wyatt said with a smile as he placed a hand on the hammer, scanning its molecular structure. He gasped slightly as he absorbed the material information of Mjolnir, as well as the intricate magical enchantments Odin placed on it. In the depths of his mind, he meticulously sifted through countless hours of arcane knowledge, carefully cataloging the intricate details required for the creation of URU, the legendary metal known for its unparalleled strength and magical properties. He stored this vital information away, safeguarding it for future exploration when the time was right. As he moved forward in his thoughts, he turned his focus to the complex enchantments woven by Odin, the Allfather himself. These powerful spells guarded Mjolnir, ensuring that only those who were truly worthy could lift the mighty hammer. It was a task he knew he wouldn't complete anytime soon. But it was possible. After 10 seconds on the outside, Wyatt opened his eyes and stepped back. I see now, the destroyer wasn't made out of URU like I suspected. It must be made out of some ancient mystic metal Odin must have found eons ago. That explains why it's so complex and powerful. Heck, its molecular makeup is twice as complicated as you are you. I guess for now, I'll keep calling it mystic metal. Wyatt thought. Holding out his hand, Wyatt summoned a flash of crimson light, which revealed a perfect physical replica of Mjolnir. Seeing the duplicate of his hammer, Thor's eyes widened in amazement. By Odin's beard. Another Mjolnir. Thor exclaimed. Not exactly. Here, give it a lift, Wyatt said as he held out his own version of Mjolnir. Thor placed the original Mjolnir on his hip and lifted Wyatt's version. After spinning it and examining it in his hands, Thor frowned. It weighs the same and the balance is right, but... It's not the same, Thor said. Yeah, it's just a cheap copy. If anything, it's a glorified paperweight with no real power, Wyatt replied as Thor handed him the fake Mjolnir. In an instant, Wyatt dematerialized the hammer. Honestly, I just wanted to learn how to make you are you. You are you. That metal is scarce and difficult to acquire. Only the dwarves on Nidavellir have access to it. Are you saying you can create as much as you wish now? Pretty much, yeah. I have no words. Your powers are quite extraordinary, Wilkins. I hear that a lot. Thor grinned and began to lead Wyatt back to the festivities. Come, let us return to the merriment. We must revel like never before, for who knows when we shall meet again. It shouldn't be long, that is, if everything continues like the original timeline. Wyatt thought as he and Thor entered the hall to the sounds of music and laughter. Oh, oh, oh. Odin stood tall on the ruined rainbow bridge with Gungnir in his possession. Behind him, Heimdall, Thor, Sif, the warriors three, and Wyatt all stood in waiting. If I remember correctly, Odin was able to use dark magic to send Thor down to Earth to capture Loki during the events of the Avengers. When Thor returned with Loki and the Tesseract, Asgard was able to rebuild the Rainbow Bridge using the Tesseract's energy, no, an Infinity Stone's energy. But if I let Odin use dark magic to send me back to Earth, will he still be able to send Thor back to Earth when the time comes to stop Loki? Wyatt thought as he looked down at the ruined remains of the Rainbow Bridge. I can see its magical makeup. I can fix the bridge myself, but I don't have enough energy to do it on my own. Even in my Kaioken form, I doubt I'll be able to even get it a quarter of the way rebuilt. It looks like an Infinity Stone is the only way to rebuild it after all. The Bifrost was created by an ancient wizard who dreamed of travel between the realms. Ever since its creation, it's been used by the Asgardian gods to travel from Asgard to any of the 10 realms and worlds beyond. Heimdall, the All-Seer, has guarded and operated it using his sword Hofund from his observatory. Despite its great ability to travel the realms, the Bifrost's power could also be used as a weapon. A weapon powerful enough to destroy an entire realm, Odin spoke, his lone eye observing the cosmos beyond. My son, Loki, was led astray. In his pursuit to prove himself worthy of the throne, Loki almost destroyed Jotunheim. I do not blame Thor for his decision to destroy the Bifrost to stop the destruction of Jotunheim. For I would have done the same. Odin turned to Wyatt. It has taken me great effort and concentration to summon the magic necessary to open a path to Midgard. Use it to travel back home, Wyatt Wilkins. It is my duty as king to ensure I make things right. Lifting his spear, Odin thrust Gungnir into the bridge, creating a bright portal filled with a kaleidoscope of colors. The portal hummed with unstable energy, forcing those on the bridge to dig their heels into the remnants of the Rainbow Bridge to avoid being pulled in. Acting quickly, Heimdall used Hofund to help Odin stabilize the portal. Go now, Wilkins. Heimdall said as he struggled to keep the portal open. Quickly. Wyatt nodded and looked back at everyone he had come to know over the past several days. This is goodbye for now. Thank you. For everything. We shall meet again, Wilkins. Now go. Thor said, and those behind him nodded in agreement. In a flash of crimson, Wyatt donned his red and white atomic suit and leaped into the portal. He only hoped that his journey back home wouldn't change future events. Hello everyone, I just want to let you all know I've hit a creative wall and my progress in writing this story has slowed down a little. Worry not, I'm still marching on and writing more chapters. Just a little slower. So if I don't post any more bonus chapters, don't be too surprised. Anyways, see you all next time.